Where did you ride?
What you doing here?
From the porch to downtown, meet up the hill that you're walking. And I've been trying to do it. Everybody's happy. Okay, where does that go? Where's, okay. All right, good evening.
Good evening.
All right, so I call this meeting to order.
Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
All right, we'll have the city manager's response to community. Roll call. Oh, roll, yeah. That. One
Dr.
day.
Bellamy,
Present.
Ms. Hill,
Here.
Ms. Walker,
Present.
Mr. Signer,
Here.
Ms. Galvin.
Here.
And we'll have Mr. Jones' response to the community matters.
Madam Mayor, no responses from last month's second meeting.
Okay. All right, we have, you have an else?
So I have a couple of quick announcements. One, this Saturday, Grace, the gang reduction through active community engagement, and NFL champion Rashad Davis, Charlottesville High School graduate, are teaming up for a community cookout. That'll be this Saturday at 5 p.m. at Tonsler Park. So there we'll have free food, a kickball tournament, a kid moon bounce, live game, as well as this morning I found out that we're going to have a horseshoe tournament for anyone who wants to throw horseshoes, as well as the BCBA Banks Collage Men's Basketball League. They'll be having a couple of games there. So it's free food, free music. Again, anybody who wants to come on out, please do so. And this is put on through not only the city and the county, but also the Grace Gang Reduction through Active Community Engagement Task Force and our NFL champion, Rashad Davis. And then secondly, I have one more. I know this was mentioned before. And the Understanding Implicit Bias community training will be on June 11th at 6 p.m. at the MLK Performing Arts Center at Charlottesville High School. Now, I know some individuals, and me personally, I'm not, well, there's a lot of people who have a lot of different feelings about implicit bias, but I do think it's important for us to attend because for some people, they need to begin with understanding their initial implicit bias. And some people aren't ready for the deep conversations. They need to start here. So I just read a really quick excerpt from Charlene Green, Office of Human Rights. As our community continues to recover from the events of last summer, and as we address a history that has us all asking, what is Charlottesville's story? It is critical to reflect on what we bring to the table. The Charlottesville area community is invited to an interactive session with Brian Nosek from the Center for Open Science. He will talk about implicit bias and share some takeaways that we might use as our community works to move forward. And again, that is June 11th at 6 p.m. at the MLK Performing Arts Center. And the cookout is this Saturday, June 9th at 5 o'clock at Tonsler Park. And we have flyers that we'll pass around. Kay, you mind passing these around for me? Thank you, sir. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
All right. Next, we have boards and commissions.
We do this at this point? Okay. This evening, we will be nominating the following to the Police Civilian Review Board: Gloria Beard, Josh Bowers, Sarah Burke, Don Gathers, Juan Gonzalez, Katrina Turner, and Guillermo Ubilla.
So is there a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
And vote?
Oh,
All right. And that's 3-2 vote in favor of the nominations. So next up is Community Matters. Paige.
Come on now.
Paige. Does she-
Come on now. This has to be a joke. I'm sorry. There's somebody that on this board that we can't even understand. Why would you do that? Why, we asked for a board that's gonna hold accountability.
So Ms. Turner, you'll have a chance to come up, I think, and speak if you want to. All right, so first we have Marta King.
Good evening. Thank you
evening.
for the ongoing support of the Jefferson Area Board for Aging. I'm Marta Kane, the CEO for JABA. Now, I have a lot of good examples of what we've been doing, but I wanted to spend tonight taking a few moments to talk about Mountainside Senior Living in Crozet. Yes, it's not in the city, but there are very few assisted living and memory care beds within the city limits. Mountainside has been a part of JABA for 15 years, and we appreciate the early support of the city to help us stabilize and provide support for those who need it. Assisted living is part of the continuum of affordable housing for those who need more assistance. We provide care at 80% or less of the market rate, and we have about a third of the residents that come to us on auxiliary grant. We are the largest provider of those auxiliary grant beds in the region. And that's a grant that means Medicaid pays us about a third of what it costs us to take care of those folks. And as I'm sure I don't need to explain to you, although JABA likes to provide services and supports to continue in the community, there comes a time for some people when living in the community is not feasible. Because of we did a market study and we found that about 400 people in this area need a memory care bed that's not available. And so we made the decision to go ahead and renovate the third floor to create a space for 20 new memory care beds for people with dementia and other diseases that would require a safe and secure place and low stimulation. Because we do keep our rates so low, the one thing we don't have is reserves for capital improvement. And that's why we need to raise the funds to do this, to pay off the line of credit, because we went ahead and did the construction to keep things moving forward. So I hope that you will support our efforts on this one-time request to help us match a challenge grant and meet the costs of creating this affordable, safe space for those with dementia. Thank you for your time.
I have a quick question. Are the 400 people from the Charlottesville, just Charlottesville and surrounding?
Charlottesville and surrounding area,
Okay.
but pretty much just Albemarle and Charlottesville area.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. King.
John Hayden. Paul Long.
Mayor Walker and members of the City Council. My name's Paul Long. I live at 100 Bridge Street here in the city. And I'm coming here tonight to talk about the decision not to renew Mr. Jones's contract 230 years ago, when the Articles of Confederation were deemed not sufficient to govern the new country. A call went out for a constitutional convention to devise a system of government that would work. I believe that the government structure we have in Charlottesville is not working for the city, as demonstrated what happened last summer. And I think that there should be a revision. I think the office of mayor should be elected for a 4-year term. I think that the duties of managing director should be restricted. I don't think that the management of the city government should be left to an appointed functionary. That should be given to the mayor as an elected official who will be answerable to the council and to the public. I also believe that we should have 5 wards, and the city council should be elected on a ward basis, and 2 additional city council and members to be elected on an at-large basis as well. You know, and at least when we have a elected mayor, it's calling the initiatives of the city. If we disagree with him or her, or disagree with how they're carrying the city, we have the right to protest and work for their removal from office. And thank you very much.
Mr. Long? Mr. Long? So colleagues, I've spoken with some of you about this and others more at length. I do think it's worthy of us to consider looking at, and I would be open to hearing from Delegate Toscano and others, what would be the process in regards to having what I think I'm hearing you describe, Mr. Long, is a strong mayor,
Yes.
not just a weak mayor, which is the
strong
current
mayor.
form of government we have now. And there's precedent set currently, if I'm not mistaken. Richmond is the only city in the Commonwealth that has a strong mayor, but who's to say that Richmond would be the only city in the Commonwealth if we consider ourselves trailblazers? And we hear often from the community and the public that they want more accountability in light of recent events in regards to the direction in which we've decided to move forward. Again, I do think it's a very noble thing for us to look at in regards to changing and or revising the structure of our current government and looking at what a strong mayor would actually do here in the city and what's the process is for us to move forward. So I would love to speak, again, I know I've spoken with some of you about it, but I would love for us to possibly task Delegate Toscano and finding out exactly what we need to do to pursue that route, or even if it meant we had to leave it up to a vote of the citizens. I don't know exactly, but it's something that I definitely would want us to move forward and pursue.
Mayor Walker, may I say something? I have no problem at this point finding out more information about the process that needs to be done and taken to change this form of government. I think it would be very helpful for all of us, including the public, to understand all the steps. I'm not saying one way or the other how I think about it, but I do think it's really important to understand that there's a multi-stepped process involved, and I think you need like a supermajority of council, you need to get permission from the General Assembly, then you got to do a referendum. There's many steps, and I want to be able to just come back to the public with a very clear series of steps so that everyone understands just the magnitude of the task at hand to do a change of the city charter, which is what that would mean, a change in the city charter.
So essentially, would that mean that we're looking at potentially adding this to an upcoming agenda, Ms. Galvin? Or finding out the steps and moving forth? Is that what I hear you
At the
saying?
very least, a report out from either Ms. Robertson or Mr. Jones.
Yeah, that's essentially what I'm asking, that we could add it to an upcoming agenda, and I'm definitely open to hearing all ears.
Just to add in here, I think it is a really important conversation, especially about what happened last year. I think that community engagement of all the things that we deal with would be most important on this, because this would really be something where a 50,000 person city would be being involved and being governed in a fundamentally different way. Richmond is a much bigger city, and you would have, there's only one other strong mayor city in Virginia, and that's Richmond. I think it's a great discussion to start. I found it, there's a lot of former ex-mayors in Charleston, probably 12 or 13 right now. I found it very frustrating. I think that even the word is a misleader, because it doesn't actually have any executive powers. So it's more like the chair of the board, which is what it's called in counties. It just happens in cities to be called the mayor, because we don't have executive powers. So it could be a really good change in light of what everybody saw last year, which was real problems with the. But I would want the citizenry to be absolutely educated and totally bought in, because it would be their government to be governed by.
Okay, thanks, Art.
Thank you. Tony Wash. Hello.
When's the green light going?
Yeah.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, City Council members. I would like to ask a question. Why is the downtown mall safe to walk 51 weeks of year, but not safe on 1 week? Let's look at these facts compiled from both the city website tours and the University of Virginia. For a UVA homecoming game, 30,000 plus people visit our city. For UVA football games, on average, 50,000 plus people visit our city. For UVA graduation, 35,000 plus people visit our city. Now, we all know that some of these people do walk, shop, and just dine at some of the fine restaurants on our downtown mall. Now there is the film festival, and I'm not against the film festival, but the film festival attracts 30,000 people and is the only week of the year that both 2nd Street and 4th Street are closed to vehicle traffic for safety reasons. This was cited by the council. When my family moved here in 1982, we had small children, and we would enjoy coming to the downtown mall and just letting them run and tire themselves out. After a few hours on the mall, we would take them home and put them to bed. Today, families can't do this and feel safe because of 2nd Street and 4th Street. You always hear about old folks like me driving, and just maybe because of an illness or because of a confusing moment, which is right now, they hit the gas pedal instead of the brake, resulting in sometime in people being injured. And let's face it, if the barriers that were at 4th Street from the beginning, when the downtown mall was constructed, were still in place last August, no one would have been hurt. The car would have been stopped and demolished by the barrier. I would like to ask the city council, no, wait. As a voter and a taxpayer, I deserve an answer. Why is traffic still allowed to cross our pedestrian mall? Green light still lit. Fact, if you go to the Charlottesville website tours, and if you go to magazines like Southern Living, Tour Guide, you will see that Charlottesville is listed as the largest and longest city pedestrian mall in the country. Now, if you go to Webster's Dictionary, pedestrian mall means people have the safety to cross and walk that mall without interfering with vehicle traffic. So the terminology has to be changed in this city. Thank you.
Thank you. Spot Ital.
Hi, my name's Spotted Tool. I've lived in Charlottesville since 2000.
Sir,
Come a little closer.
so you must
to
speak
the
in.
mic.
My name is Spotted Tool. I've lived in Charlottesville since 2000. I live on Grove Street. I'm going to say something that might not be clear until the end, but it's concerning stuff that happened last year and recent things with congressional elections and Tom Garrett. Basically, the line is that Garrett has spoken is that he's dropping out of the race because he's a good man but an alcoholic. And that's leaving out a large amount of history. I mean, we all know that he had a photo shoot with Kessler before the events of the 12th. which he moved away from by saying that he didn't know who Kessler was at the time, that he thought he was weird, but he met with him and got his photo taken. At the same time, over the past year, Tom Garrett did a lot of things, and I remember different events of it, where he dodged and evaded Charlottesville citizens and their concerns. I know specifically things about people who had scheduled meetings with him about the Affordable Care Act, who he avoided those meetings. I vaguely remember other events where he basically snuck in and out of town, evading his constituencies. And in one of the most notoriously gerrymandered districts in our country, he was ready to lose an election, and that is why he stepped out. And all of a sudden, that is totally off the agenda of what's happened. And the discussions within replacing him for the election was just proving that the new guy can clone him in Congress, and whether or not he's going to join the conservative caucus and so forth, and still evading the issues of hopping into bed, which many politicians, both Democrat and Republican, but most notoriously our president, have hopped into bed with fascism. And I will say that is exactly what it is. It's fascism. And the thing is that as soon as you start, because what did he know about these people who wanted to meet him about the Affordable Care Act? He didn't agree with them. What did he know about Kessler? Seemed to be talking about something that he agreed with. Pure opportunism, and that's halfway to fascism right there. And if not fascism, collaborating with fascism. And I would like City Council, as a voice for Charlottesville citizens, to ask or invite the Republican candidates, or any candidates really, not to evade Charlottesville citizens and their concerns. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Peter Krebs.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Hello.
Peter Krebs, Piedmont Environmental Council in Charlottesville resident. By now, many of you are familiar with our work with the Planning District, the city, and the county to create more and safer connections for people to walk, ride, and run in Charlottesville and Albemarle. The public response has been overwhelmingly positive so far, and we would also like to praise the work that you are doing to make the city healthier and more prosperous for all residents. Tonight's consent agenda contains several items specific to McIntyre Park and to CHS, which will have a big impact. My own son starts high school this fall, and I'm just so excited that he'll be able to get there under his own power safely thanks to your work. And believe me, he's definitely not alone in that regard. Our community conversations are going well, and I would like to share a way that you can help us connect with more voices. We've created a brief 13-question survey which asks people about how they get around town without a car. It asks what interferes with their ability to get around safely and have fun in the outdoors. And it also asks for their suggestions about connections and ways to make it better. The survey can be found online at pecva.org/Seville Greenways. I have copies with me, plus informational cards that I can give out. And also we have a clipboard version of the survey, which can be taken to businesses, doctor's offices, etc. In fact, I dropped one off at a doctor's office on the way here. He's giving it to his patients in the waiting room, so not only will they be less bored, but also he'll be able to help them get healthier through our work. I would lastly like to thank Nikaya and Kathy for coming to our hip hop bike ride last weekend. It was super fun. We're having another one, which will be a lit up twilight techno ride. That will be on Thursday, June 21st, 7:30 p.m. at the Bridge PAI. Thanks for the awesome work, and I'll see you there.
Thank you.
Hold on, I got a question for you. Did you just say the word hip hop and Kathy in the same sentence? you hip hop and Kathy?
Yeah, and he said
21
Nikaya
Savage.
and bike in the same sentence.
Oh, okay.
It was way fun.
Got you.
We'll get you at the techno ride,
Just got you.
It was a lot of fun.
I won't be at
Thank
the techno
you.
one, but I got you.
It was really
Well-
nice riding with the hip hop.
right? The dance music ride, if we call it
I
something
just
else.
was making sure I heard that correct. But all right.
Yeah, it was
Gotcha.
super fun. Thanks, y'all.
Thank you, man.
All right, Don Gathers.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
As I start, Mr. Jones, I want to thank you for your years of service and dedication to the community.
Thank you, sir.
I haven't always agreed with you, but in my opinion, you didn't deserve this. I hate saying I told you so, but... So once again, a black man is being held directly responsible and terminated, while whites that are blatantly wrong and out of line are allowed to saunter off into the sunset, full retirement in place. It is what I've referred to as a job genocide for black men in positions of power in this city. Council, I sincerely believe that you have made a mistake that will ultimately come back to haunt us. Where and when, if ever, does this stop? Now the Nazis see another chink in the city's armor. They see another void, another opening, and another opportunity to come back, marching in to spew more of their hatred and do more damage to more of our community. Mr. Jones, I plead with you to please stay with us at least through the end of August to provide us with the stability that we desperately, sorely need, lest we fall completely vulnerable to their evilness. And as to the scheduled trip to Alabama, and Mr. Signer, your apparent hesitation to vote in favor of the funds being appropriated to supplement the planned pilgrimage, let me offer this question. Where was that same level of hesitancy prior to the vote granting $75,000 to the Downtown Business Association? A fraternity, if you will, that has no direct benefit in any way towards the minority community of this city. I further understand that there is some pushback against the funding of internet services for those in public housing. Yet another obvious slap in the face to those most in need in our community, and I urge each of you to fully and completely fund the internet initiative. Transparency and fair even-handedness, is that too much for us to ask? Is it too much for a community to expect from its governmental leaders? Finally, were there any alternate positions considered for the CRB should any one of the appointees be unable to or unwilling to serve? And did not the resolution that was presented include a directive that one individual be from low-income housing?
That's right. That's right.
If so, of the 7 names presented, which of those represents an individual from this particular segment of the community?
That's right.
Thank you.
That's right. That's right. We have the transparency in this board, man.
All right, Mary Carey.
We're already not getting it.
We're gonna have to deal with this for 2 more years. I guess I'm ready now. Mary Carey, city resident, which I'm getting sick of it. Mr. Signer, you just as false as $3 bill. You came in this chamber with a bunch of junk telling people you was the president of Fayetteville. That was a lie. You came in here, you put down the whole black community of Fayetteville, saying it was nasty, filthy, and full of drug addicts, drunks. You said that the black women were doing favors behind the ABC store for trips. You did. It's in the paper.
It's not Mr.
Oh,
Fenwick.
I don't want to hear. This is my 3
Mr.
minutes.
Fenwick said that,
Look,
not me.
look.
I
You
never
messing
said
with
that.
my time. All right. I'm claiming my time.
Okay.
So say something else, because if anything come out your mouth is a lie. And when you came in here, you, Miss Gavin, Mr. Bellamy, you changed all the rules so we wouldn't have no freedom of speech up in here. Because y'all couldn't handle a little criticism. Then you go get up in your little, whatever you call a retreat meeting, talking about you trying to throw people out of here. That's because, Miss Gavin, you can't stand criticism because you've done so much wrong, and karma gonna eat your butt up. Miss Hill, your day coming too, sweetie. You just got there. And you listening to these crooks? They tore Charlottesville up when they came up in here. They made these people angry. They took the freedom of speech out of this city. This was the worst city council that ever served in Charlottesville. You three was on that board. Krista Seikos wasn't no saint. She was the biggest devil in this town. She stabbed black people in the back deeper than a knife. And then you sit up there and get that vote like that. What are you afraid of? What are you afraid of? You afraid of something? And when you sit up here, and we out here in the community know exactly, and we read all these resolutions that y'all supposed to be reading, that y'all omit when you get ready, and you go behind your little closed doors, get your little segments together. Mr. Jones, I don't like everything you did, sweetheart, but a lot of things you did good. I don't like the way it went down. Everybody knew it was coming, because this here right here, you didn't like Thomas, because Thomas wouldn't do what you wanted. You didn't like Mr. Jones, because you wanted to run the city, and he told you he worked for the people, which you don't know how to do. Now you don't want the Citizen Review Board to be run by citizens. You got people on there that don't even know a damn thing about Charlottesville. So what are y'all gonna do? You're going back to the table. That's what you're gonna do. Anybody got anything to say? Of course not.
I do have to correct, that was not me that Ms. Carey was talking about. In that newspaper article it was another counselor, but it wasn't. I didn't say what you said about the parking lot.
Always not you.
But I did not say what you said about the parking lot.
Of the things that you
I just
do.
have to-
When are you gonna
I just have to say that.
apologize to the city of
I've
Charlottesville
apologized to
for the
citizens.
last time?
I've done it many times.
Stop trying to be the mayor. You never was a good mayor. You don't understand anything. You are a shyster lawyer. And you don't even do that well. Don't mention my name again. I mean that.
Lisa, could you come in for a second?
We went through all this, all these meetings. We fought for this board for what? For y'all to do this to us. We asked for a board with accountability on it.
They don't know what accountability is. They don't know.
And y'all gotta come on, y'all gotta do better. This is just proving to us that you're not standing behind us. To me it is. It's proven to me. Even though I'm on the board, I'm very upset because we fought for this board. We fought because we need accountability in this city. And you all are not backing us.
All right, Evan Brown.
Evan Brown, city resident. Kind of hard to follow up with Ms. Carey, but I want to talk about a few things. One, show up this Friday for Community Defender Corey Long. Did nothing wrong. Charlottesville General District Court, 10 a.m. Show up and support him. He did more than the police did on August 12th to protect people. So let's show him how much we appreciate it. Second, I wasn't planning on talking about this, but the Civilian Review Board. I noticed there's a couple of key people missing, specifically Jeff Fogel, who's been in this fight for as long as he's been here, who's led the effort on stop and frisk and bringing it to light of just how discriminatory it is. But he's not on the board with his experience, his expertise, or not even to mention Rosia Parker, who's also a very valuable community member whose voice would be greatly appreciated on this board. A longtime city resident, compared to some people who've been here, what, a year? So where is the transparency in assigning this board? I noticed you all were in closed session beforehand. Were you all talking about that? Will those minutes be made available? Will you talk about what transpired and why Tubi voted against that? Will the results of the survey be released? And if not, I'd like to actually formally request a FOIA request right now. Mr. Wheeler, if you could please reveal those survey results and within 5 business days, that'd be fantastic. Finally, I'd like to say it's pretty curious that of the 3 people who had any semblance of power on August 12th, 2 black men have either retired or been fired, Mr. Jones and Mr. Thomas. Yet the third, the white man, still sits here on city council. Despite all of his mistakes, all of his errors, despite his racism, which I will call it that, specifically after removing 3 people of color from city council after August 12th, he needs to resign. And you all need to start being way more transparent, because if you really think you're doing anything different so far, you're not. And it's clearly obvious. So I would really appreciate a response into either 3 of these things I've talked about. Thank you.
Okay, we have some open slots available. Did anyone else want to speak?
Harold Foley, 1407 Millen Street. I'm here to represent Legal Aid. I am an organizer for Legal Aid. I've been working on the CRB. And in the resolution, I hope y'all read it, because it says someone from the low wealth community supposed to be on that board. And I don't think y'all have one on that board. You're looking strange, but it's in the resolution. I can bring it up for you right now.
Make sure you do that with the police too, the experience with the police, when some of them said they didn't have no experience with the police. So, yeah.
And so, my question to City Council, who's the person who's the low wealth community representative? Thank you.
Are we allowed to respond to that, or is there anyone who would? No, I voted against the Civilian Review Board, so I don't know if anyone wants to respond, because that is in the bylaws, that's in the resolution that we passed. So,
But Mr. Bellamy, you never brought that up as a concern. But I don't recall.
No, don't tell. No. I'm not gonna stop. No, I'm not gonna stop. First of all,
Katrina, could you just let us?
There's 2.
In just a second.
It's 2 very strong points. One saying that I never brought that up as a concern.
Star, if you just wait just a second, we have some more slots.
One tiny white dick. You got the dick again.
Jesus Christ, what is wrong with you, Signal? How you gonna just blame it on him?
I'm not blaming it on.
What?
Did you read it? What did we fight for all this time?
All right, would someone else like to speak?
Tyson up there.
name is Jim Shea. I live in Charlottesville. I want to follow up on the point that Harold Foley made about the failure of council to appoint someone of low wealth to this board. Tell me what community in Charlottesville suffers the most from the racism of the Charlottesville police? Now, I don't know what shell game you guys are playing, but it's time to get off it and get real. If we mean to serve the cause of justice through this board by reforming the police department in a way that it desperately needs it, then you better rethink what you've done tonight and come out with another list.
That's right. Gotta do something.
And if you don't, then you're just showing who you are and where you stand. And I'm really sick and tired of seeing you people pull this bullshit.
Call it deep pockets. That's what you call it.
We've been fighting to form this CRB. We dismantled the police advisory board so we can form this CRB. We asked for accountability on this board. There are people on here that don't have interactions, never had any interactions with the police. No. That's what it says. Where is the low-income person on this board? Where is it at? I don't see him. Why did you all do this? This is all I wanted. Why? Because y'all are trying to form a board that y'all don't think we're going to get accountability out this board. Is that, I mean, where is Jeff at? Yeah. Why isn't Rosia and Jeff on this board? A civil rights attorney, why is he not on this CRB board? What is wrong? He is one of the ones who fought for this board. Why would you put people on the board who knows nothing? And they said on the panel, they don't know much, but you picked them anyway. What is wrong? I did not apply for this board to be jerked around. I need accountability. As you all know, I have a complaint against 2 officers. So this is just showing me that y'all aren't trying. Y'all aren't trying. So I'm asking you if you would go back and do the right thing and put Jeff and Rosia on this CRB.
I'm Gloria Beard. Y'all know me. I'm from the city of Charlottesville. And I thank you all for putting me on the board, but I do believe the people that's had encounter with the police needs to be there. I haven't had any because I worked all my life and stayed indoors, you know, so I haven't had no issues. And the people that do need to be there, you all. I mean, I know people get upset, curse and holler. I don't agree with that. But they know more about this than some of these people. I don't even know. I didn't get all the names who y'all chose. I don't know how long they've been here. I think I've been here enough, you know, years. But the point about it, the people that's really been, you know, harassed by the police and stuff needs to be there. And I don't know how it's going to turn out, because if we don't get this thing together, I don't even want to be on the board, to be honest with you. I need to learn from some of these people who has this, you know, oh God, y'all don't know, this hurts me. Because we need to do this right. And Jeff knows a lot. I don't even know a lot. I mean, I'm willing to learn, because I'm definitely going to be, you know, Googling and trying to find out how the other cities do this thing, because I don't like to do things halfway. I'm a thorough person, and I do the right thing. But people that know about this stuff need to help us. We can't bring in somebody been here 2 years, they never had nothing, no encounter with the police. But I know what they do, because see, I'm black, so I do know. But you know, so we need people that really understand, so they can teach us and help us. So I'm willing to learn all I can, and to be fair. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else want to speak?
afternoon. My name is Rosia Parker, and I'm a city resident. I am a low-income resident, and I've fought 13 years watching the police abuse my people and low income. I don't know what you thought. I don't know what you're thinking. And you got money, so you definitely not thinking. Hello. But I need you to have an understanding just what it means to really be black and fought the police. 7 police on me because your officers made a mistake and hit the panic button for no reason. I had white, big bully officers on me. And when I go to court, they're going to tell me to plead guilty? Not. But I'm going to make sure that the police have accountability. Either I'm on the CRB board or not, because I'm still going to call them out. Either you like it or you lump it. But until somebody gets accountability, I'm going to keep fighting. But y'all don't have no one on that low income. So you can keep looking at me funny all you want, but you're going to feel me. Because I'm not going nowhere. And I'm going to stay here, and I'm going to dig in y'all's ass.
Would anyone else like to speak?
What's happened in here this evening is a travesty. The fact that it fell along racial lines is even more of a travesty.
Rosia was the first one to sign person on there before the last day we could sign up. Rosia was the only one on there.
Hi, Donna Teachin, Charlottesville. I have just 2 spontaneous things to say, which is that with respect to the Police Civilian Review Board, it is a travesty. You really need to go back and start all over again. The whole point of this is, as Mr. Bellamy knows and Mayor Walker knows, is to get representation for the community and have oversight over the police. I don't know why you even have the option of choosing the people. The people were voting for the folks. We know who we want on that board, and the people should choose that. The second thing I want to say is I'm really sorry about, well, I'm not sorry about the raucousness of our community, but I want to make it clear that it does not represent anything about Mayor Walker, whom we 100% support. It's the frustration of past council members. Thank you.
All right, anyone else? All right. So we're going to take a break. That was the end of Community Matters. Wes. that's still not gonna resolve the issue.
No, I think we at least should. I don't want to.
Okay, so we have a definition of low income. Not more than 80%.
Yeah. All right, so I call this meeting back to order. And so I think we're gonna open this up for this brief discussion about the CRB. And so I think that we have, again, everyone to note my vote, but I think we have a low-income member on the board. I don't think that's the only issue that we're hearing, and we are hearing you, but I do want to note that.
Yeah, I think that was I thought a lot of our understanding, because we recognized that was a requirement, and we certainly considered that, and it was my understanding at least that we did have someone on that list that was in the low-income community. And if we're wrong on that, then we need to know that, but I believe that's been confirmed.
Mm-hmm.
And if I may add too, that we do understand that person, that they need to be a member that had experience with the police and a negative experience with the police, and we also felt we had a member that represented that perspective as well. So we felt we had a low wealth and a member of the community that had negative experiences with the police, and that they are represented on this body.
Any other comment?
What, for me? Oh, I said what I had to say with the voting process. I'm really disappointed, and I'll leave it at that.
Jeff Vogel was the #1 person on our list. So what happened with the survey?
Okay. I think it's
What was the purpose? Black women survey? What was the purpose? Roselle was #3. What was the purpose of the survey?
Any other comments from?
What was the purpose? Can y'all answer the purpose of the survey? And why you asked people who you wanted on the board, who they wanted on the board?
So I think that's fair. Question.
And how come it wasn't picked like that? How come y'all took Jeff Vogel, the one person with almost every vote?
No.
I mean, because what was the purpose of the survey, y'all, am I right?
So,
Surveys for sure.
Evidently,
Yeah.
just like Trump.
Well,
so are you gonna have any? Do you have a?
I certainly reviewed all of the survey information, and it was interesting because I do think that the survey information contradicted itself in terms of those comments that were put forward, that were written out, and people's perspectives. And we have to consider all the information that we're given in those surveys, and it is one component that we're basing it on. And as much as I feel like we were largely aligned on this decision, and we just couldn't get quite all the way.
No, we weren't.
I'm saying we couldn't get all the way. I think a lot of this came together, but we just couldn't get all the way with the board.
Can you show the survey on the board to show everybody? Can you show that on the board? So we can see exactly how y'all decided. When the people already decided, how did y'all decide?
Yeah, we should know the
I mean, come on now.
transparency.
Yeah, this is what we've been asking for, transparency, y'all.
So I think it was, if I'm not mistaken, if we have 3 of us who decide to speak about closed session matter, we're allowed to. Is that correct, Ms. Robertson?
Only if 3 of you agree. So you always
Correct.
adopt a motion to go into closed session where you agree that there's an exemption that applies. So you would need to take a vote to, to change your minds about having a discussion in an open meeting about those matters.
What do you have to hide?
I would be fine in talking about this. So everybody knows, this is a much bigger thing. We appoint a lot of boards and commissions, and they're always, and no, just to say, I mean, everybody, the confidentiality that's put on them is there for a reason all around Virginia. So but in this case, it's so if we decide as a group that we want to talk in more detail about it, we can. And we if we want to do that. But it does, we don't usually, I mean, I remember there was one time I wanted to be on the Economic Development Board, and councilors had told me they would support me, and I wasn't on it. I didn't get appointed, and I felt frustrated too. So I'm saying that, but I'm saying that this is something, we do this for all boards and appointments. They are all in closed session, and it's in parts possible. I mean, that's a deeper argument.
So do we?
So that would be a whole other thing.
So are there?
Miss Walker, it's what's said. In my opinion, what's said has been said. Let's just move on. Like what's said has been said. Look.
Survey was put out, but you all didn't listen to the survey. We need some understanding.
This is really important to the community.
I agree.
You all sent the survey out and asked
So are there
who did
3
you
votes
want
to
on
this
board.
to have an open discussion?
I would.
And
I
Mayor
would
Walker, if
discuss.
I may just make a comment, I think it's very important that we understand too, that there are individuals that have applied and they're not banking on having their names broadcast in public. That's why these are appointments. These are not general elections. And so I think being very careful about
Hold on.
individuals, talking about individuals is very, very
I do agree with that point.
potentially harmful.
So, Ms. Galvin, if I may respond, I understand wholeheartedly where you're coming from. The reason why I think this particular situation is a little different because we had a public forum at the Jefferson School in which all of the candidates were there. So all of their names have already been made known to the public. They've also been able to describe their qualifications. And then even before that, we publicized the names of who were on the board. So while I understand both where you and Mr. Signer are coming from in regards to we normally don't speak about specific boards and commissions because in the eyes of some it's a personnel issue and we don't want to put everyone's business out there when they're applying for like an economic board or so forth. But this is indeed different because I don't think we've ever had a public forum for one of our boards.
Your point is well taken. I think that distinction stands, and I agree with it.
All right, so now open for comments. I'll start. So my recommendation going in was that we select the top 4 members that the community chose, and that the top 3, and I don't even remember now. I'm so out of it. But I think the top 3 or 4 members that the community chose, and then the council chose the remaining members of the board. And that's without having it committed to memory exactly who those people were. But we looked at it in session, and I think that those individuals should have been on the board. There were some comments about the survey and whether it was scientific, and there were things that we did not ask, and I've had a conversation with a few of you about income and whether we met that requirement in the resolution. So we have now discussed that we have met that requirement, but I still think that the makeup of the board should have looked very differently.
if I'm just being candid, like, I'm appalled that we don't have a civil rights attorney on the Civilian Review Board. And I'm fine with stating that Mr. Fogel and I, we've had several disagreements on the dais, in the crowd. I've spoken with Mr. Fogel on several different occasions all the time. And like, someone doesn't have to agree with us as counselors all the time, or we don't even have to, in the eyes of some, we don't even have to necessarily like someone personally for us to put them on a board. Our job is to be objective and get the best people on the board. And since we're talking about it, I'm just really disappointed that we don't have, again, a civil rights attorney, an individual who's...
And that ultimately was the slot that really was the greatest debate. And I...
Why did you not choose him? Why did you say that?
I am not comfortable bringing him.
Hold on, we open this. We open this for discussion, is what you all asked for, and we're discussing it.
I looked at this less as individuals, but looking at a body of people that could represent various perspectives that could work together to achieve what we're asking to achieve, which is really to build the bylaws and outline. But for me, I was very open to the discussion around all of the candidates, and I really felt firmly that Mr. Fogel was not someone that I could support.
This is the one that's going to help us with the accountability. Why wouldn't you support him?
Okay.
I mean,
City Council Review Board.
Right?
Any comments?
And as much as like the survey, I understand there's some numbers here, but in terms of just the commentary in this survey, despite the numbers and how they were tallied up, the person who had it was also the person who had the most concern among people who actually took the time to write their thoughts around this process. And so for me, that also weighed in on my perspective. And
so I think it's
okay.
So to that point, I think
Do you all any comments?
I just want to say that, again, the survey and the results that were packaged together, that was additional information, but this was not an election. This was not a vote. It was simply not a vote. This was a council appointment that we were making as we all make appointments. It was not a vote for elected office. That is what you do when you go to the ballot. So we are here making the decision based on input. And it's clear that many of you are disappointed with our decision, my decision. But I will tell you this, that my concern was to have a very effective, productive board where there would not be any one person commandeering the group. And so that's where my decision came. And I'm not going to be going into individual discussions about individuals on the board. We have a member who was low wealth, members that were experienced with run-ins with the law that were very negative. And we wanted to get a group that had both the legal background as well as the community background to do the research that we needed. And so I'm just going to leave it at that.
Can I say?
Yeah.
Can I?
Hold on, please.
Can I speak? Can I speak? So the survey. Well, if I can't, you all have asked for us to explain. So. All right. So I won't say anything. You don't want the information? Yes. So the survey was important information, but we are not rubber stamps. It was information to take into, just like having a lot of people show up at an event. It's information to take in, and then we process it. So Josh Bowers is a civil rights attorney. He was a criminal defense attorney for a while. He publishes on very progressive work. That's my understanding of his background. So you do have a criminal defense attorney, and I am not going to get get up here and make negative comments about an individual applicant because I'm concerned
can he
about that
just-
for all the other
can he
people who
finish?
apply to our boards and commissions. I don't think we should be up here making negative comments about applicants. I can just say that I thought that we could get better working together from this board on their mission of holding the police accountable with the new police chief coming on from the group that we chose. And there was a lot of back and forth about how do we get to that. Part of what's not being represented here is there were different parts of how do we get to
Hold
how do we
on,
get to
please.
3 and 4, and then what was the debate about 1 or 2 more to get to 7? So that was a whole other thing, and I'm really not comfortable talking in detail about that. But I can say that it is not what you all are. There was a lot of discussion that went into this, and a lot of this opposition we did think about. So it was because my interest was in thinking that this group of 7 would work together the best and do the work that they were charged with. And this, so that was.
You have no knowledge about what we're talking about. You don't know anything about the police. Your opinion on this means nothing.
You don't let somebody on the board where we can't even understand. Why would you do that? We can't even understand.
Ma'am, so that actually was part of what I'm saying. That I didn't support that,
Why would you do that when we're trying to?
because the way in which the list came together at the end was really choppy, and there was not consensus on each individual person. So there was debate about that, and that. So if you had been in the room, you actually would come away with a different impression.
So I
think that's not a bad. I mean, with certain things we could do that. That's what we did for the mayor decision, and it ended up being more transparent than we usually are. So there,
So do you?
I would like to call the question, and let's move on to the consent agenda.
Do y'all not want to talk about the vote?
What else is there to, what else, people, what else is there to talk about?
So y'all don't want to talk individually. I think the points that you're bringing up in terms of the discussion without talking about the discussion isn't helpful.
I just can't. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and be critical about
Okay.
individual
Do you want-
candidates. I just can't.
Do you want to?
Then
Should we? Want to?
All right.
Is it worth acknowledging?
I didn't
Is it
say
worth
that.
acknowledging where we were
Stop
broadly
there.
aligned? Where we agreed?
I didn't say that.
You did.
But I'm not going to say anything further than that.
They don't want us to talk about.
I just,
Is it worth acknowledging where we were strongly aligned as a starting point, just to share with the public where we were aligned? Is that worth? I mean, were we?
I really don't think we
Okay.
should be calling out names as being favorites and negatives. It is really
Makes everybody feel like crap.
very disrespectful of the candidates, and this is not something that we should indulge in.
All right.
We're gonna get once the CRB is
You're being
formed.
shot by the police.
Are we gonna have to go through all
Okay.
this with the CRB? Because I thought you all weren't even supposed to have anything to do with the CRB. From my understanding.
Don't want this board to succeed.
And I should be picked anyway because I got hit with the tear gas
Most
grenade
publicly
twice.
favored candidates
And
don't
almost
want it.
come on now.
Okay, so
You know better than this. Get out of here.
so that's
No. No. You got people that say it, they don't know nothing about Charlottesville, but you put them on this board.
So I would encourage everyone, correct me if I'm wrong, this process, these meetings will be open to the public? Is that?
Yes, the CRB
Yes.
meetings will be.
So
One year.
it's the first year, and so I would encourage everyone to participate in the meeting schedule. And you can, even though we did not appoint you, being at the meetings, having your voice heard, coming back to us if you are hearing things within the meeting that you don't think will be beneficial. Long before we get the final outcome of the year, would be helpful. And so since they are open meetings, you will be able to participate in that manner, and I hope that you will.
When is the first one?
Why not make the appointment short, maybe like 6 months, and then, you know what I'm saying? And if it doesn't work out, then you can change people or something, or other people could apply.
Well, there will be another application period at the end of the year once the bylaws have been adopted that this group will come up with. So there will be another opportunity for people to apply and be considered.
And I would say that if those bylaws are created in advance of a year, we could start that process sooner. We're just trying to give them enough time.
Yeah. Okay.
Is there any room for opportunity for alternates? Because if someone can't fill the position, then we end up with a board of 6, which means that now you have the potential for a split vote on anything that comes up.
Yeah, I think if someone, and again, Lisa, if I'm incorrect, but I think if someone was not filling their attendance obligation to help the group do what it's supposed to do for the first year, then we would appoint another member.
That's usually what you do. Usually the board or commission that someone is not participating on will let you know that, and then you have a decision to make about whether to allow that person to continue or to replace them.
And that process is fine, but if you already appoint alternates, then you already have someone in place anyway, they can be sitting at the meetings, can be cognizant of what's already taking place from the board.
Well, that's not a part of this process. I do understand, like what you're saying. I think we have the people who showed up, even though I don't, that I think that they will probably be dedicated to what the mission is. But again, I encourage everyone who applied and then other people too to attend and let it be a true community effort and not just a few people.
It's unfortunate that that you and Wes your votes are the ones that we respect the most, and yet the others are overriding essentially what the citizens themselves have said they want.
That's right. Because they don't care about the black and brown people out here on the street. That's why they voted the way they did it. We try to hold accountability for this police department, and evidently they don't want that.
I think, it's one of those things where you just don't know. I mean, I'll speak for myself. Part of my support would have chosen, on my list, it was Rosia over Katrina, right? So I think no matter where, if you knew all of the discussions, what the list looked like, that someone would have possibly had an issue. Like, that is probably a question now, is why did I choose Rosia over Katrina? And if you all have an issue with me saying that, I apologize in advance. But that was my vote. So then someone could have asked me, why not both of them? Who else did you pick, right? So I think no matter what direction you would, if you knew everything, there still would have been, but what about, and what about, or what about this scenario? So we were not all aligned, and it was very different, reasons, as to why. But yeah. And so
Mayor,
I'm just sharing from.
May I add something too? It was very important that we had a cross section of different race and language status, so that we have 3 African American, we have 2 Hispanic, 2 white, and then there's 3 women, and there are 4 men.
Mm-hmm.
So again, that there is a cross section of the community. That's just an important point to put out there.
That's what we asked for.
Yeah.
And I do think that it would.
Okay.
That's all I need to say,
Okay.
and I really do hope we could move on.
Mm-hmm. All right. Okay. So. So we're gonna move on to the consent agenda. Zai, would you like to speak about the CRB? You can come up.
I think you already heard my remarks from shouting in the back of the room, but my main issue.
But I think people at home can't hear you.
Oh, well, I mean, I don't really want to go on the mic, but what I was going to say is that I just think that if, like you're saying, go to the meetings, this is not just against you, Mayor Roberts, but
That's fine.
everyone, go to the meetings, participate, but as we're seeing, you and Wes are in a corner, meanwhile, Hill and Signer are having your little conferences to the side and your breaks in the back room, and then Kathy's just voting for whatever. So it's 3 people versus 2. The same thing's gonna happen through CRB. What are we gonna go for if they're still gonna have a majority within the CRB? Nothing's gonna our presence isn't gonna help. It's not helping here. I mean, they're we're not gonna talk about this on the dais. So I mean, I don't know.
I guess I take a little issue with that because I do feel like I'm trying to be open and talk about it, and I was even brought up someone's name, and I will say I during the break during the break I talked to every single one of my colleagues. It might not have been in full view, but I just feel like we communicate a lot with each other, and I really think we are really trying to work together. And there are some things that we are going to disagree on. And this is one where it fell in this way, but I think there's been so much other precedence where it has gone in other directions, and I just want to continue.
We get that y'all communicate with each other, but not with the public. So
I'll say, and then we will move on, but I'll say just from the comments since my last Facebook Live post about what transparency, what the community, how they would like to define that, and what the position up here on council means. And there are a couple of individuals that I have had conversations with about how they respond in their occupations, who come in here and they demand something that they don't demand when they have to, respond appropriately in their work environment. So I think some of the things that we are being asked, and this is from someone who totally hears everything you all are saying, is no one talks about everything they're thinking all the time, every thought, every decision they make. It just doesn't happen. I don't know, I've been thinking about this for weeks, under what circumstances does it actually happen? So I think part of where we are, and I appreciate all the activism. I am an activist at heart. I would not ask anyone to stop. But I think we really need to think about if what we're asking is realistic in terms of if everything, because there are people who I've had conversations with who I didn't do it with my mom when I was in elementary, middle, high school, at any point, share with someone every thought I had and have someone agree with it. And that is what I feel like people are asking of me. And that will never happen. Okay? So I just think that we have to figure out a way that the work we're doing is actually productive and accomplishing something. And that's it.
We agree with that. I think we're just worried about how Ms. Galvin said, we checked off this box, we checked off this box, but we have never seen the checklist that you guys are using. So I think we're just all a little bit lost in that. We're not asking you guys to give us visible thought bubbles or anything of that nature. We just need a little bit more, because we don't even know what. I mean, we're hearing that some of the comments offset the numbers, but again, we don't have any type of measurables, so we don't know
And I think one other thing to your point is that there are members of the community that Heather, Councilor Hill, Galvin, Signer, even West, they would speak to that I would never speak to, right? So if someone comes in here and say the people that I had a conversation with or I talked to over the past few weeks, they are not the people who are showing up at every meeting, but I know what the inbox look like, what some of the phone calls look like just for me, so I know that they're communicating with other people in the community. The question then, especially with something about the Civilian Review Board, do you listen to members of the community who have had probably no negative interactions with the police force, or do you listen to the community who have, right? And I think that's a big question, but they are talking to community members. It's just not the community members that you all probably spend, a lot of time with.
Madam Mayor, can I say, I do think one thing from this is that maybe in the future we can, especially with certain ones, we can just have an open discussion of the appointment. We did that with the mayor decision. It was very transparent. It was very new. It was uncomfortable, but with certain ones, it would change a lot of things. I still think that some folks might be unhappy with how restrained or, unforthcoming we'd be about our thinking about certain people, but at least you would see the whole process would still be a little. But we could do that. That's within our power, and we could have done that in this case, and we could do it in the future with ones coming down the next. So, it's never. I never feel great about the entire thing.
If I may
being
just
done
add
that,
this, so I guess the other option is that we have every board appointment is selected through referendum. Okay, that's the public having a direct ability to vote.
And
I do not think it's very good for public morale that people are voting by either they're yelling positive or they're yelling negative jeers and comments with names that we bring up. I do not think that's appropriate. We do it because we ran through an election. That's part of our game. That's part of our process. But not when people are coming to an appointed position. I really must state, I think that is not, it's not healthy for the community. It's not healthy for the people applying. And I really think I would like us to move on if possible.
Okay. All right, so the Paige, do you have the first meeting, the date? There was a question about the first meeting. How will the meeting be set up?
I'm not sure. We can take care of that administratively.
Okay, yeah.
We'll reach out to the applicants and set a process for them to set the first meeting date and go from there.
Okay. All right. Okay, so we're moving on to the consent agenda.
Item A, minutes for May 21st, 2018. Item B, an appropriation supplemental funding from Charlottesville City Schools for the Charlottesville High School Fieldhouse renovation project, $121,775, first of two readings. Item C, an appropriation grant for construction of Rugby Avenue Trail, $396,450, first of two readings. Item D, an appropriation fire equipment overpayment reimbursement, $18,712.50, first of two readings. Item E, an appropriation Charlottesville Affordable Housing Fund for repayment of substantial rehab loan, $24,000, first of two readings. Item F, a resolution allocation to CRHA for internet installation, $150,000, first of one reading. Item G, a resolution community civil rights pilgrimage funding request, $55,000, first of one reading. Item H, a resolution 227 Brookwood Drive special use permit, first of one reading. Item I, a resolution Seville Sabroso Festival funding request, $2,400, first of one reading. Item J, a resolution VDOT recreational access funding, McIntyre Park Bridge, first of one reading. Item K, an ordinance homeowner tax relief grant program 2018, second of two readings. Item L, an ordinance proposed conveyance of a portion of Water Street right-of-way for Charlottesville Technology Center at 230 West Main Street, second of two readings. And item M, an ordinance renewal of Sprint franchise agreement, second of two readings.
Okay, is there a motion?
So moved.
There's one item that I would like to talk about before voting on it, which I think I'm permitted to do.
Not pulling off the agenda.
Not pulling off the agenda. But I guess I can just make a comment before we vote.
I'll second.
Okay. So I just want to make a comment on the Ting CRHA.
What item that
internet,
is that?
Item F. I really applaud my colleague Wes, his effort on this and his work on behalf of the CRHA residents and this issue about the digital divide. And I think Ting is a really good local company that works really hard and that has good values and certainly cares about Charlottesville. Just as a matter of process, I would have preferred that in this case, we have three things. We typically get a lot of information from staff in our memos when we make decisions. We don't have a contract that explicitly spells out that if Ting is acquired by a corporate parent, that they have to fulfill. Like what we're doing is we're funding the infrastructure capital costs of somebody getting internet in their individual unit, but for $9.99 a month. It's not clear to me absolutely that if Ting is acquired that they have to fulfill that, the parent that comes along. So that's typically something you would do in a contract, and I would have preferred to see a contract. I would like to see written confirmation that HUD, which is going to be doing this with CRHA, is okay with just with a one bid, with Ting being the only company that has been arranged to do this, because I just would feel more comfortable. I've seen emails anecdotally about it, but I haven't seen anything written. And then I also like to know about the cost basis, because I met with the Ting representatives a couple of years ago, and we talked about this, and it was $200 an installation, and now it's $400. I understand that might include the modem on top of the installation, and that's absolutely fine. I just feel like we put so many people apply for funds through such a rigorous, exacting requirements. We just don't have them here, but there's support in my colleagues. I think it's a great program, and I think will have wonderful effects, but I just want kind of for the future, as we consider requests like this, to make sure that we meet those kind of fiduciary paperwork type requirements. But I'm not going to vote against it, and I applaud Wes for his work on this, and CRHA for putting the resolution together that led to it, and Ting for doing the good work for the community.
Mayor Walker, may I say something? And I just, and I appreciate Councilor Signer's comments. However, the Housing Authority is its own authority. It has its own independent governing body, the board that makes the policy decisions that have given rise to the desire to, bridge the digital divide. Earlier in the day, I had asked Councilor Bellamy to provide the resolution that the Housing Authority had passed back in April. It shows that it was a firm vote in direction that was in compliance with the strategic plan of the Charlottesville Redevelopment Housing Authority. They are a separate governing body, just like our school board is, just like the Rivanna Water and Sewer Authority board is. And so, yes, we can give them some suggestions, but we can't tell them how to spend the money that we give them. We agree with their mission, we agree with their project, and then we fund it. And it is by law, they are the ones that are supposed to be responsible for determining how that is spent. And that is proper and that's appropriate. So I just want to underscore that this is the Housing Authority's call. We agree with it and we're funding it, but we do not meddle in their business.
So,
May I make a quick, I'm sorry.
Just have a comment. So even for me with this, and there have been other projects, like I was the only council member who voted against the school system budget and increase. I think that when, to just say that we just give organizations money and there's no follow through, I'm not comfortable with that at all. I do like that on this agreement, we will be given an update. But we normally, when we're asked for funds, there is a contract or a clear overview that we see, and I think that's all that was being asked, and I asked for it too. So I just don't want to, it wasn't just Councilor Signer that asked for it, but I agree that, it's something that I support, but I had a lot of the same questions. And I've had them about almost every organization that has asked for funding since I've been on.
So as the counselor who brought this initiative forward, I'd like to respond. And I'm glad to see that we have the proper amount of support. What I'm really disappointed with, though, is that it's the fact in which we as a council continuously try to inject ourselves into matters in which there is a clear separation of government of sorts. So, for example, if there is a CRHA, a Charlottesville Housing and Redevelopment Authority, then we have to allow them to be able to do the work as they see fit. We cannot say to a housing authority or a school board or any other entity in that nature that you must show us the contract before we allocate funds, because there has to be a separation of the fact. And if we have, it was asked for me to provide a memo in which individuals received the memo. There was asked for a presentation of sorts in which team came and they provided some updates about what will be done. I've spoken at length with all of my colleagues about it, and again, I'm glad that we're supporting, but the fact and the fundamental fact that we're now going to be able to provide high speed, very high speed internet access for $9 a month to individuals who live in public housing should be a slam dunk for us, especially as we talk about equity. But it seems as if whenever we start to have to actually put our money where our mouths are, we get caught with all of these different questions about why this shouldn't happen, or maybe we should look at this. But when Ting initially said that they were going to provide internet, or the city and Ting was going to enter into a contract on a downtown mall to provide internet access, we didn't have nearly any of these questions. And it's mind-boggling to me that we've had to go down this rabbit hole to get to this point. But there can be sometimes no progress without a little distress, and nonetheless,
But I don't think they
weren't
weren't valid concerns.
How were they not?
So if someone had a memo that Mike had that was $200 less per household than what was on your, I mean, again, we can move on, but I don't think that's not a valid question to ask. How did you go from 200 to 400?
And if it was explained
per installation.
No. What I'm disappointed with is the fact that it was clearly explained in terms of the installation, the hardware fees, and so forth. But yet there still was a need to state that here in front of everyone after we already got the answers. I don't get why that needed to be stated after everyone has all of us have the answers in regards to exactly what we're going to be paying for. We have a resolution from the Housing Authority about what this exactly is going to do and how it's been passed and adopted, but yet there still is a need to bring this issue up. That's what I'm disappointed with. But again, nonetheless, if we all agree, and I heard you all just say that you don't object to it, we trust the Housing Authority, and Mr. Duffield is here, the Housing Authority Executive Director. We trust the Housing Authority that they will indeed get the contract. Those discussions have already started. We know that installation is looking to be started in terms of providing the hardware as well as all of the tools needed to get the $9 internet access for everyone in public housing. It's going to be about a 12-month process. The sooner we can get that ball rolling, the sooner we can start closing the digital divide. And I'm glad that we're not going to hold it up any further.
Well, I do have a response, if that's okay, Mr. Bellamy.
Yeah, you sure.
One is that you've referred multiple times, with all respect, to an agreement that was struck for the downtown mall. That happened before anybody here was on council. I think it was back in 2009. I asked for that today so that I could be informed. We have no information about that. I don't know anything about what was struck with Ting, and I don't know the questions that we would ask now. The other thing that we don't have is a budget, and we have a resolution, but we don't know how the figure of $150,000 was arrived at. That's typically information that we would get. We also do not have what you've said, which is the amount of money that goes toward the $400 figure. We don't have it. I've not seen anything written down, and if anyone wants to ask, not that those are all just things that we would put a lot of other applicants for city funds through the same things. And the final thing, if I could finish, the final thing, you alluded to governance questions about, this is the real big point, which is CRHA is an independent entity. Correct. We did allocate, at your initiation, I think $1.5 million toward redevelopment, $2.5 million. Now that was open-ended because our assumption is there's not a private vendor at the end of that. That is for CRHA to decide, and that was, I think, an excellent, well-intentioned, public-minded way to jumpstart redevelopment. This is very different. The precedent that this gets into, and that's why we have to ask these tough questions, is it's an independent body with an independent budget that's self-funded. So if City Council gets into a pattern where every budgetary request from CRHA, which is on federal funds and on the income they get, we are going to fund everything they want to do, that actually violates exactly what you just said, which is the independence of the body. And then we become a funding agency for CRHA, which is not how it's designed. It's an independent authority that funds itself with the rents that it gets and with federal funds. So I'm just saying we can go down that road, but I think I'm glad we're having the discussion because the public, it's really important to figure out, because right now we're trying to figure out, is self-sufficiency for CHA something that we want, which is tied up with redevelopment, but it is going to impede the progress towards self-sufficiency if we get into a situation where council is routinely funding, especially off-budget requests by CRHA. It's not that they don't make us feel, it's not they're not really good for people, first of all, and that they're not worthy, but it does create governance issues, exactly the ones you just said. Those are all the issues. With that said, I think it is going to help a lot of people. I support it, but I do think there are extra questions that we have to ask if we keep the next time.
You're creating a false narrative in a variety of different ways. One being that when you state the fact that the CRHA is an independent body, which means that essentially the city council doesn't want to get into a situation in which we're just a money pit for them to continuously come and ask us for funding. That's not what they do. I'm on that board. Literally, they've only asked us for money, if I'm not mistaken, Mr. Duffield, 3 different times. One for maintenance repairs, and they didn't even ask us on the second occasion for the money for the redevelopment. That was something that I initiated, that $2.5 million. And then this request. So that's 3 requests, 2 of them initiated by a city councilman. That's why I believe the initial point in your argument is a false narrative. Secondly, when we look at the fact that this is an independent body, and we say that we cannot continuously put money there, this is very much so similar to what we do with the school system. The schools receive federal funding, they receive state funding, and they receive local funding, and yet we cannot tell the schools how to spend $1 that they have. We can suggest, we can say that we would hope that you do X, Y, and Z. However, we have no jurisdiction or authority according to our city charter to tell them how they're supposed to spend. They are no different. So for us to say that we want to see a contract, I want to know exactly how you should do X, Y, and Z, is a false narrative that the public hears, and then it sometimes makes them believe that we may be being irresponsible with how we're allocating funds, when essentially that is not the case. Because as you stated, our charter states that they're independent just as we are. And if we're both independent, we as the city can indeed provide a grant in off funding cycles, because we do so on several different occasions. This project, as you alluded to, is for the greater good of the community. We want to close the digital divide as we discuss equity in Charlottesville, and that's what's going to move us forward. But just for clarity, I am going to make sure that all of council sees the contract when it is finished with team, and we will also, we being the CRHA, will provide quarterly updates if need be in regards to the installation process, as well as how many public housing residents, all 376, how many of them have actually taken advantage of the non-dollar internet, to ensure that all of our concerns are heard. I hope that we can move forward now, because
Can I make one more point, which is just the only thing that look, this is really important. That's different from the school budget is it's off budget cycle. We had 7 or 8 public hearings and town meetings about the budget, and this is really appropriately considered during the budget cycle.
I agree.
This should be in the regular budget. So it creates the scrutiny and it creates the need for this kind of back and forth when it's off cycle, because in that case, we don't have full staff and we don't have full preparation, lots of people coming to our budget sessions, the opportunity to chew it over for a couple months. That's my only point, is that in the future, let's put this into the regular cycle. I just had to say that because it is different from the schools in that respect. Okay. The schools we do during budget cycle.
Thank you.
And I'll just say,
thank you to as well.
Mr. Duffield, I think that whatever you need, that you should ask us for it. But I also will say again, Wes, that I think that having the information in full up front would have been very helpful. And I don't think you should wait if there's a need that we can help with. And I don't think that we should look at you independently if we know that you don't have the funding to meet your needs. So that's not what I'm saying at all, and I just want to make sure that's clear. But I think that we are here and we should be able to ask questions. I intend to ask them, and that's it.
I'd like to call the question.
Let me jump in.
Sure.
Earlier today, we got notice from the Commissioner of Revenue that he would like you to consider adding some additional language to the homeowner tax relief grant. Currently, the ordinance that you have in front of you states that any remaining grant amount in excess of what's owed on the taxpayer's second half bill, not exceeding the entire annual tax due, would be remitted to the taxpayer. And the Commissioner of Revenue would like to add at the end of that sentence a provision that says, or the remaining grant amount can be applied to any delinquent amount on the first half of the real estate tax bill. If that's something that, if that's an amendment that you would accept as proposed by the Commissioner of Revenue, if someone could just make a motion to amend the pending motion that you adopted on the first reading to include that additional language, that would be all you need to do before you vote.
So moved.
Second.
All right. And vote.
All in favor?
All right.
Now you have to vote on the consent.
Oh, and that's 5-0.
That was just the vote.
That was for the amendment.
Thank you, Mr.
Oh.
Oh, I thought that was everything.
No, I think, right?
All right, the vote for the amendment.
That was the vote.
That was the vote for the
Okay.
amendment.
Did everyone vote on it?
So now, a
I
motion
move that
to
we
approve.
vote. I move we vote for the consent. What is the agenda?
Now you're voting for the consent agenda as amended.
All right, thank you. All right, now we have our first public hearing to close a portion of Dice Street. And we have 20 minutes for that agenda item. Thank you.
So recently, the trustees of the Bethel Church of God in Christ, represented by Pastor William Ward, requested that an alley located off of Dice Street should be closed in order that the church, which owns a parcel of land on each side of that portion of the alley, can make certain improvements, including some improvements that will allow people to walk back and forth between the two properties, whether they're handicapped or elderly or otherwise, under some improvements that will facilitate that type of travel. The city's street closing procedures apply to this application, and the application was circulated for review within Public Works, Utilities, and NDS. And the comments that came back did not indicate any opposition to the application. There are no public utilities currently located in the alley. The research that we did in connection with this application indicates that the alley was created in the mid-1920s. There is no language in the deed history of this particular area to indicate that the alley was ever expressly dedicated for public use, or that there was any sort of manifest intent for that alley to be a public alley as a matter of record within the land records. So what the alley is a paper street that was created by the original landowner that owned a larger tract of land in the early 1900s and decided to subdivide it into a series of lots where the rear portions of those lots abutted the alley. In this instance, the church, for reasons that it can explain to you through its representative, who's hopefully here, believes that it's necessary to clear up title to the land and make sure that the area proposed to be vacated is clearly theirs to make decisions about and to develop for the purposes they intend to use it. And that's my understanding of why they have submitted this application. Your staff report reviews the application in a little more detail and responds to 3 different questions that are matters to be addressed as a result of the city's street closing application. And so what you're required to do this evening is to hold a public hearing on the request and then make a decision as to whether or not you want to grant it.
Okay. All right. Any questions from council?
I do have a question for Ms. Robertson, Mayor. What would it, you mentioned that this is not an accepted alley on the part of the city. It is part of a original subdivision. So what does it take to accept the alley, and then what does that mean practically when the city accepts an alley?
So the word acceptance, as we used it in the staff report, we probably should have been more precise. It implies that the use of it implies that there had previously been a dedication of the alley for public use. But as used in this memo, it was used as shorthand to indicate that the city's never improved the alley as a public street and doesn't maintain it today. But the only way that the city could have accepted an alley for public use is under circumstances in which at some point previously someone had actually offered it to the city through a dedication for public use. So what you often see on a subdivision plat are those words specifically. So you'll see this street is dedicated for public use, or this alley is dedicated for public use, or this stormwater, this drainage easement is dedicated for public use. It's a term of art, the dedication for public use, that indicates that someone actually intended that to be a public area. The review of the deeds in the land records for this property don't have any of that language. And the alley was created before the city had a subdivision ordinance, and so to sort of figure out the intent, we have to look into the words of the deeds that are a matter of record, as well as the plats that go with those deeds. And we don't see anything to indicate that the alley was ever intended to be a public alley. In the early part of the century, alleys were often created to allow more lots to get fitted in, but to allow access to the rear of lots so people could put sort of trash and get to and from their parcels for reasons other than access by a public street.
But it wasn't an alleyway from the beginning, because property was torn down on both sides, so that people just started going through there.
Come up during the public hearing.
7th Street one way.
Mr. Shaw.
Oh, yeah.
We can't see him.
Could you?
Thank you, Mr. Shaw.
Yeah, could you grab, so you could maybe come up and say that during public hearing?
You're not going to.
No.
Just one second.
All right, was there any? I just wanted you, if you would come up and say it during the, so that we could hear you and that the public at home could hear you too.
Well, I'm sure everybody can hear my voice in it, right?
No.
It doesn't work that way for the camera. So were we done?
Yeah,
Okay,
thank you.
so
That-
open
that-
public hearing?
So,
All right.
Richard Shackford, I'm a resident of Charlottesville. I live at Crescent Halls. The area y'all are talking about, houses were taken down way before Walker Square was put up. There was a road that went through. A house was a driveway. What you're talking about used to be a driveway. Then that was taken down. The parking lot was put up because the church was there. And there used to be I think a plumbing company that shared that parking lot. That alley was not an alleyway that actually began like they have alleyways in Belmont. that's all from Avon and extends all the way up to Monticello. It wasn't like that. So I don't know what they were talking about in the alleyway, but that's not what it was. It was just a straight drive-through that somebody had put there. Somebody bought the property years later, I think in the 70s and maybe 80s, that tore down a couple of buildings. Walker Square was put up. They had their entrance way coming up off of King Street, because if you go in that way from Walker Square, you're gonna get flat tires, because they had the things in the road that do that. You know, but there was no alleyway. You know, y'all come to our city for a certain number of years, and then you want to run for office, but you don't know the city. When you learn the city, speak to folk that have been born and raised here. You have the perception for 60 years about what happened on Vinegar Hill. Every time you read it, it's about folk that had nothing to do with black folk, that were black themselves, that y'all getting all this information from. To me, if you want to learn about Vinegar Hill, you should have went to the first families of West Haven to see what transpired on Vinegar Hill. Because everybody that reads thinks Vinegar Hill. Jefferson School down to the Vinegar Hill Theater. Well, it went all the way up Preston Avenue. Black businesses, both sides. Vinegar Hill, Main Street, where the bus station is, you had black businesses on both sides. Now we come up years later, we want minority businesses. Isn't it strange that when you say minority, you group all of us people of color, but the ones my color can't ever get the money? You know? Stop coming here, running Charlottesville like you run it everywhere else, because it don't work here. And a lot of you won't even hear when they had the electric buses that somebody came here, didn't know Charlottesville. People had to get off the buses for it to go up Cherry Avenue or Johnson Village. Because somebody come here with a brainy idea from a flat state, Ohio, that said, oh, we need electric buses. Well, Ohio don't have the hills. Every city in the state of Virginia have hills. So stop coming here trying to show us new things. We already know new things. You forget, we've had the University of Virginia here for umpteen years. So we get a lot of new things. Stop coming and making this city a city for everybody when you know it ain't for everybody. You have a what did you call it? All-American city? Isn't it strange that we can say we're an all-American city, but we don't take care of all the Americans in the city? We think about money that you put out for school teachers, firefighters, police officers, nurses, to get homes. 40 years ago, they didn't need city's help to do it because the city made sure they got a good salary.
Thank you. All right, Peter. Oops.
Hey, thanks for having me again. Peter Krebs, 1022 Tufton Avenue. I'm also speaking on behalf of my employer, which is located on Water Street, Piedmont Environmental Council. So the alley situation in Charlottesville is extraordinarily confusing. Paper streets, alleys, even when not one knows the facts of an individual case, it is still not clear how it ought to be handled or what's the right thing to do. And as someone who doesn't know all the facts of this particular case, I'm not going to pretend either. But I will say a couple of things. One is that I was a bit disturbed when I read this staff report and talked about how the alley didn't possess public utilities, when in actual fact, from a land use perspective, an alley is a public utility. A alley is a public resource in and of itself. And I think it's important that when the city makes decisions of this kind, especially an entity like NDS, it needs to take into account all of the components of the assets of which it is the steward. So apparently this is not an alley, so I don't know if this applies, but generally speaking, alleys provide ways for people to get around safely and without cars. And that's something I just talked about a few minutes ago, and it's something we hear about all the time. And furthermore, it is extremely difficult to obtain land for these connections. It's even difficult to obtain permission for a right-of-way to move through a space. So the city should weigh carefully about yielding back rights-of-way or yielding back streets to private ownership, and also be aware of the fact that it's a forever decision, you can't claw it back, and also of precedent that it sets in other cases. I look forward to listening to further discussion about this case and learning more, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
Chairman Walker and members of the council, my name is William Ward. I am the pastor of Bethel Church of God in Christ, the church that's in question here. I want to appreciate Council Member Robertson for explaining in great detail.
City Attorney, Pastor Ward. City Attorney.
City Attorney, that's right. Thank you. You did a wonderful job explaining our position. And the gentleman that came before, well, two gentlemen came before me, but the African-American gentleman, I appreciate his historical rendering of this particular parcel of land. All I know is that I've been the pastor for over 20 years, and for over 40 years we've been maintaining that property, cutting the grass, making sure that there's no clutter and litter and those kinds of things. And in the time that I've been there, there has been no activity other than the church activity. The reason I'm sincerely requesting your approval of this request is because, as you know, Dice Street now goes one way, but many times, even while we're in our worship experience, there are cars that violate the traffic pattern and they're zooming up the wrong way. We have senior citizens, we have people with handicap, and we have children. When you come out from our sanctuary, after that small space where the sidewalk is, they're right in the street, for lack of better terms. And what we would like to do is we're talking about connecting the two buildings so that we can preclude any possible accidents to vehicular traffic by moving between the two buildings. Again, that's our position. Again, there has been no public thoroughfare, vehicular or pedestrian traffic that occurs there. So based on the information from my research, I really don't see any reason why we can't be granted the right to take advantage of that space in order to connect our two buildings. Thank you.
So it's not just going to be closed, there's going to be something built on it.
I guess I have a question then for staff on that. When the public hearing is closed.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak? All right. Close the public hearing. Open it for council discussion.
So I guess, Mayor Walker, I can ask Ms. Robertson, I guess, or if anyone from NDS is here, but have there been drawings submitted for additions or modifications to the building to warrant basically what almost seems like a consolidation of parcels to create a bigger parcel?
Well, if you approve the proposed ordinance, that's essentially what will happen. So the land on up to the center line of the alley. So if it's a 10 or it's a 12-foot alley?
12 foot.
If it's a 12-foot alley, 6 feet will go to the property on one side, 6 feet will go to the property on the other side, and there'll be the new boundary of those two parcels will be the center line of the alley. And so that's what a street closing or an alley closing of this type does. It changes the boundaries of those two lots. There is not a lot of detail. As I understand it, the improvements proposed to be constructed would be in the nature of like a covered walkway or a sort of a paved area that would take you from one lot over to the other one. I don't believe that that would necessarily require a site plan. It probably would require some sort of zoning verification that setbacks and that sort of thing are met. But probably the only approval that would be necessary would be a building permit. Now that's subject to the zoning administrator filling in. So I don't know that that type of application has been filed yet because they probably need to know before they start whether or not they can clearly use that area for their purposes, because that would essentially block it off from other people using it.
And the segment, as I understand it, is close to 70 feet long, which is about the width of two parcels on that face 7th Street.
That's
okay. So you're turning this into a parcel that is actually going to be about 117 feet wide now and 70 feet deep from what it was originally. So anyway, that answers my question. This is consolidating parcels that gives the potential for a larger building, maybe not this building, but in the future, correct?
Well, I wouldn't call it a consolidation. So for instance, the property at the corner of Dice and 7th would acquire another 6 feet at the rear. And then the parcel at the corner of Dice Street and the alley, which is right behind that, would acquire another 6 feet of width. But they'll still be two separate parcels. The rear lot of the lot that faces 7th Street will gain 6 feet, and the side yard of the property having an address on Dice Street will gain another 6 feet of side yard. There'll still be two lots. And then the remaining portion of the alley can still be accessed by the other lots that are adjacent to it from Capitol Street.
But it'll be a dead end.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, any other comment?
No. I'd like to.
I just have one. Lisa,
Sorry, go ahead.
and this is an area I'm learning in still. So could you tell us the difference between this and the item that was on our last agenda that was in
The other alley.
in Belmont, right?
Yeah, in Belmont.
Oh, gosh.
That was an established alley.
Sometimes when
Okay,
I
I
finish up
understand.
with a
I
meeting,
should've
things
asked you
don't stick
before.
with me to
I
the following
understand.
meeting. But with alleys and streets in general, it is really complicated because who has an interest in those areas often depends not only on the words that are in a deed or plat that's been recorded, but also what year the plat was recorded in. So if a lot or if a street or alley got created after we had subdivision laws, quite often, just showing those areas on a plat and indicating that they're for public use transfers title to the city automatically under modern subdivision laws. That wasn't the case before roughly the 1940s. So if you showed an alley on a plat, even if you said this is dedicated for public use, title didn't convey until it was actually accepted. So that's why some lots or some areas that come forward, and I think that may have been the case in Belmont, if they were intended to be public areas, the city, for those older areas, acquired an interest in the property, but you didn't actually get title to it until you accepted it. And so it can be really difficult because there's so many variations on whether we have title or just an interest in the property. I know that some of you are very interested in coming up with a new city policy that looks at how we can make use of paper streets and alleys to complete sort of a street network. What we'll have to do as you explore that interest is identify which alleys the city has a title interest in or already has a legal interest in that you can sort of claim by accepting that interest. And which alleys, like this one, you may not have a present interest in, but if you have sort of a master plan for a street network you want to build out, you could acquire an interest in property by purchasing it from the people that own the areas or, other means that you identify. But you probably have to go about implementing that policy in a very deliberate way by identifying areas where you want to build out a network of alleys. And then we'd be able to do the research and tell you which ones you already have an interest in and which ones you might need to acquire an interest in. Does that make sense, Mayor?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right.
I don't need to get the ball rolling this time, but we do need a discussion.
Okay.
I move that we adopt the ordinance for closing and vacating and discontinuing a portion of a 12-foot wide alley off Dice Street near 7th Street Southwest.
To second that.
There's no vote tonight.
But we do discuss it, right? So.
Well, we were supposed to discuss. I thought we were just having a discussion.
Well, I thought the motion is what allows the discussion to happen.
Yeah, we were a little out of
questions.
order there, but.
Okay.
So
It says council discussion then invite.
Well,
But go ahead.
And as the initiator of the motion, I believe Vice Mayor Hill has the right to first comments.
And for me, it was really just understanding kind of the differences with some of these scenarios that this was kind of interesting that for 2 meetings in a row this has come forward, and having gone firsthand to kind of see both scenarios, I do see them as different. I'm just not as savvy on all the technical reasons why they're different, except for just what I've observed, and then hearing accounts from folks who have observed this for decades. What I saw is not something that I can ever see being used as what I would consider a traditional alley, whereas a lot of those that we've discussed in the Belmont and other parts of the city, I certainly can see the use and the connectivity value there. I'm not seeing it here, and I just personally don't want to get in the way of this. An additional property owner expressed interest, and also this happening. And we had in the last time around some concern from other property owners that they didn't want to go in that direction, and just feel like, I want to be consistent, but at the same time, I do see these as different scenarios, and so I'm certainly inclined to support this request.
And the city hasn't been maintaining it because of your comments,
Right.
correct?
So
Okay.
we have never identified this one as an alley that we have a current interest in. So if we don't either have title to it or we don't have a documented legal interest that we've accepted, then we don't maintain it.
Okay.
Quick comment, which is that I thought the gentleman's point from before about local history was well taken. I lived, our house is a block away from here and walked past it many times. I think he's right that Fifeville is very fluid. There's an old general store down 5th Street Southwest that had a road that went all the way through to 7.5 for over many years, and then that road over the years, I've been told this by the folks who've lived next to it for a long time, it gradually just was let go, and then it became part of, I think then it was driveway, then it became part of the yard, and it's totally unused now. And I don't know if it was officially closed, but it was a road next to the general store. The general store now is a residence. And that's, it seems like we haven't heard any meaningful opposition to this, and if this is what the neighborhood wants, and the most important stakeholders are the church using it, it seems that's very appropriate given the fluid nature of this neighborhood, and it seems fine to me. So that's how I would look at it.
Mayor Walker, may I offer my couple cents? I did visit the site and walked around and try to get an understanding of how much of the alley was being used, and a good portion of it is used. It's rough. It's definitely rough, not maintained. I can see that the buildings in question, the church and the youth center, are very close, but you can still see the line of the alley. I look at this as almost like an example of how we could, quite frankly, insert affordable housing all over our city, because it is a small half-acre block that's 117 by 210 feet, and there are 9 units on it, 9 parcels, and that comes down to about 16 dwelling units per acre. And so it doesn't seem to be incompatible with the rest of the single-family homes in the area. But when you get parcels so narrow as 35 foot wide, you really need alleys in order to service them, because the numbers of driveways that you would need on that short of a distance would eat up the entire sidewalk, and it would make it so that it's impossible to park on the street. And 7th Street's a very narrow street. So I do see this as being different, but the same family of policy matters for us, because it has to do with how do we create a variety of housing types, different sizes, that are going to be able to be living and breathing places for affordable housing in our city. And this is an area that does that. So I do see that the combining of the 3 parcels, even though it's still separate ownership, but the conjoining by getting rid of the alleys does serve to create a bigger unit that over time could be consolidated. And forever you've closed off access from Cabell to Dice Street. Anybody been down there during rush hour knows that it's very hard for anybody walking to get around, biking to get around. The cars can't even move. So I would suggest that this is very much in keeping with trying to maintain our interests, slight as they may be, in our alleys, and not give them up until we get some research done and assessment done on what makes sense in the vein that Ms. Robertson outlined, based on the future discussion we're going to have on the draft policy idea that I put forth on May 21st. So I'm not gonna support this.
Any comments? I mean, I still appreciate the fact that I have till the next till the next meeting to vote. I think this is the Douglas Avenue. That's 1, 2. So this is the 3rd Paper Street that has come before, well, that I've seen in the past few months, and I just, I mean, I hear that this is different. Well, mainly for me, the question that I asked about who's been maintaining it. If somebody has been maintaining something for 40 years, that's a good, clear indication for me to support. But then I have some of the same questions that I had about the other 2. But the fact that that the church has been the one maintaining the land, that is, at this point, why I would be in favor of voting for it, and that we don't have public here. The adjoining properties seem to be in agreement, and that they're not here in opposition. So unless we hear something differently from them by the next meeting also.
Okay.
Any comment?
No.
No? Okay. All right. All right, so there's no vote there. All right. So we'll move on to our next public hearing. The utility rate report is the first of 2 readings.
Do you have a presentation?
Yes.
Okay.
Mayor and councilors, I'm Lauren Hiltbrand, and I'm the Director of Utilities, and I'm here to give you our annual operation review. Is this not on? Yeah, it should be on. Is it on? Oh. I thought it was on. It was on. It must be good. Now can everybody hear me? Good. I want to first go over the water distribution system. The city owns and maintains over 180 miles of water lines that range in size from 2 to 18 inches in diameter. And we maintain 1,100 fire hydrants as well as 3,400 water valves. Right now, within the water system, we're concentrating on implementing a water prioritization study that was first developed in 2009, and we updated it in 2015. And this is where we've outlined some 100 projects that we have commenced, and we're replacing water lines all over the city. And these projects will improve fire protection, reduce main breaks, improve overall water quality, and address our undersized lines. We've got a large amount of our lines are 2 inches in diameter, and they don't provide adequate fire protection. You can't put fire hydrants on 2-inch lines. So far, we've completed 65 projects, and we've got about 30 or so in the queue that are designed and waiting to be constructed. So far, we've replaced to date over 12 miles of line. Another aspect that we concentrate on within the water system is water loss. We like to prevent water loss because that's lost revenue to the system. And as far as that goes, we have a meter testing and replacement program where we test our meters to make sure they're working within tolerance. They have to be within 95% of tolerance. As meters age, they tend to slow down, and once they slow down, that's lost revenue to the system. So far, we're concentrating on the larger meters, which are 1.5 inches in diameter or bigger, and we've replaced 59 of these meters so far, and in 2017, and over 150 meters to date. We also, as part of the water loss prevention, we do an annual system-wide leak detection survey. This is where we have a contractor come in, and he actually, with noise, he can hear water leaking under the ground. And he goes through our entire system every year and identifies leaks. And those that aren't difficult, we repair with our in-house crews. We also, according to American Water Works Association, we do a water audit for our system every year. And this is it's kind of a baseline that was established about 5 years ago. And we see where we need to concentrate our efforts for efficiencies and where we need to make improvements as we move forward in the future. And for the 3rd year in a row, we were given the EPA WaterSense Partner of the Year award for our water conservation efforts.
As far as our wastewater system, we've got about 170 miles of pipe, and we maintain 5,700 miles manholes. In 2009, we awarded a multi-year, multi-million-dollar contract, and we utilized what's called a find and fix approach for sewer rehabilitation and sewer replacement. And this is where we go and televise the system. We find deficiencies within the system, and it's all done under one contract. And then that work is then completed pretty quickly once it's found. We also use this contract to rehabilitate sewer manholes and sewer lines. To date, we've replaced or rehabilitated over 40 miles of sewer lines. And using this find and fix approach, because we minimize our engineering costs when we do this, we don't actually go out and design a lot of infrastructure or together a big packet of engineering design drawings with this approach. We've saved over $2 million in engineering costs just with this approach. And we put together a paper because we thought this approach was pretty interesting. It's not done by a lot of cities, and it was widely accepted. Staff gave this presentation at the 2018 Water Environment Federation Collection System Conference, and just this past March, and it was we got some really good reviews, and we're doing some things in Charlottesville no one else is doing. As far as the stormwater conveyance system, we maintain 130 miles of pipe in over 8,000 structures. And since 2010, we've incorporated the rehabilitation of our stormwater conveyance system with the find and fix approach with the sewer contract. So that contractor that handles that term contract, when we do it with a similar process, we go out, televise systems, and when we find things that need to be repaired, we issue it back to the contractor, and we were able to make repairs pretty quickly. To date, we've replaced or repaired approximately 10 miles of pipe and 250 structures. We also completed, as part of the charter for the stormwater utility, water resources master plan that lists many water quality improvement projects and drainage improvement projects, and work has been initiated on 4 of the highest ranking water quality improvement projects and 7 of the highest rated drainage improvement projects. And this master plan was completed last year. We also maintain a gas system, and this provides natural gas service for the city of Charlottesville and the urban areas of Albemarle County. We've had our gas system for over 150 years. We currently have over 21,000 customers, and we maintain 330 miles of gas line and 270 miles of gas service lines. These are the lines that go from the main to the meter at the house. 2017 was kind of an all-time high for a number of customers. We had an increase of 502 customers last year. Typically in the past, it's been between 300 and 400 customers over the last several years, but we've had an all-time high last year. And just to talk a little bit about some of the efficiencies we've been implementing within the gas system, we've been working with the Information Technology Group to develop different applications to track new gas installations. So when the guys are out in the field actually installing new gas mains, they can take pictures, it can tell in real time where they're standing, and it gets input into our GIS map viewer instantaneously, all these new gas installations. We also have to track abnormal operating conditions. This is required by the State Corporation Commission that we're regulated by. And when we go out and do leak detection surveys, which we do with in-house crews on the gas system, they note abnormal operating conditions. This could be where a meter needs to be painted, or we even get abnormal operating conditions also defined where a meter is too close to a door or a window once it's installed, because sometimes additions or things happen afterwards, and we have to go back and fix those things. So this is all tracked through applications now, and it's created some major efficiencies within the gas operating system. As many of you know, we have Flicker the Flame, who was born in 2007, celebrated his 10-year birthday last year. We are required through federal regulation to have a comprehensive gas safety program, which Flicker actually spearheads, and we use him for many of our public awareness programs. Last year alone, we were awarded 2 awards in the 3 CMA 2017 Savvy Awards National Competition. One was for the birthday party. The other was actually for the Flicker toy. And this is where we compete with people all across the country that just don't do gas. We also headlined a presentation, A Path to a Successful Public Awareness Program at the 2018 State Corporation Commission Damage Prevention Conference this past March. And this is where we go through a pretty thorough multi-day audit every 4 years on our public awareness program. And they always do the large utilities first. They do Richmond Gas, they do Columbia Gas, they do Virginia Gas, they do Washington Gas before they get to Charlottesville. And we're the only one that's been noted so far without any deficiencies in their public awareness program. And everybody's looking to Charlottesville to figure out what we're doing right. And also, because of our public awareness program, we've noticed 36% reduction in third-party damages where excavators hit our gas mains in the last 3 years. And with that, I'll turn it over to Chris.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of council. I'm Chris Cullinan, the city's Director of Finance. And so to provide the reliable, safe, environmentally sustainable operations and infrastructure that Lauren just described, what we have before you on this slide are the revenue requirements for the upcoming fiscal year for water, wastewater, natural gas, and stormwater. The projected water budget for FY 2019 totals $11.7 million, an increase of about $873,000 over last year. For wastewater, the total budget is about $15 million, an increase of $1.1 million over last year. And in both cases, the majority of the cost and the largest single item causing the cost increase is the city's contribution to our Ravenna Water and Sewer Authority. We purchased potable water from Ravenna and send our wastewater there to be cleaned and returned to the environment. On the natural gas side, the projected budget for next year totals just a little over $28 million, an increase of $2.2 million over last year. Somewhat similar to water and wastewater, the single largest cost is the purchase of the resource itself. 42% of the budget is the purchase of natural gas. It's about $12 million in the upcoming year. I think one thing just to note regarding the cost of natural gas is that while you are setting rates that would go into effect on July 1st, one of the differences between gas and the other utilities is that natural gas is traded on a daily basis in the commodities market. And so to the extent during the course of a fiscal year, the cost to purchase gas goes up, we make an adjustment on a monthly basis. If the cost of gas goes down, we make a similar adjustment. If you ever look on your utility bill, there's something called the purchase gas adjustment, and that's where we're making that adjustment based on the actual cost of purchasing the natural gas. And again, it comes back to the idea that we operate these utilities as enterprise funds, or put probably more simply, on a break-even basis. And so any revenues that are being generated are just sufficient to cover the costs. And so to the extent that the cost of natural gas goes up, we need to pass that along to the customers to make up the difference. But likewise, if the cost goes down, we don't need that revenue. And so we adjust the gas, the PGA downwards. And then the fourth one, the stormwater utility, the total budget projected for next year is $3.3 million, which is no increase over the current year. Within the rates and charges that you're considering this evening, there are 3 recommendations from staff. The first of which is year 1 of a 3-year transition plan for the University of Virginia away from the 1981 water agreement with the city to paying full city rates for water and sewer. The second one are proposed changes to the monthly service charge for customers for water and sewer. And then third, proposed utility rate increases for water, sewer, natural gas, and stormwater. And I'll go through each of these in a little bit more detail, starting with the 3-year transition plan for the university away from the 1981 water agreement. In year 1, starting this July 1st, The rate proposal includes making up 25% of the difference between what the university pays under the 1981 agreement to what the full city rates are. Year 2, we take that up to 75%. And then by year 3, they're paying a full city rates for both water and sewer. The 1981 agreement goes away. The monthly service charge, if you look at your water, sewer, and natural gas bill, there are two pieces to it. One is the monthly service charge, which in the case of water and sewer is $4 for each of those. It's $10 a month for natural gas. And then the volumetric rate based on how much you use. We're proposing a change to just the water and sewer. The natural gas is going to stay the same. It's for the majority of our customers, approximately 94% who have a 5/8 inch or 3/4 inch water meter. It's a $2 a month increase, $1 for water, $1 for sewer. And in addition to actually changing the dollar amount, we're changing the way that it's being allocated based on the size of a customer's water meter. And I'll touch on that a little bit here in a moment. But essentially, the larger the size of your water meter, the increase goes up indexed based on the capacity of that meter. And this just splits it out between the two. Like I said, for water customers, you can see how many customers we have with each of these size of water meters. Your 5/8 inch, your 3/4 inch, those are primarily residential customers. And as you can see, we roughly have about the same amount. The sewer number is a little bit lower because we do have folks who are on septic systems. And so that's why those numbers don't match up there at the bottom. But again, the change for the vast majority of city customers is $2 a month, $1 for water, $1 for sewer. And the reasons for this are several-fold. One is to improve the revenue stability, to ensure reliability and safety of service. As Lauren mentioned in her presentation, the city has a conservation ethos both by this council and previous councils as well as our customers. And if you look at the amount of water folks have been using on average over the last 10 years, it's been going down. While that's great for the environment, it presents some financial challenges for the utility, since the vast majority of revenues that we generate are only generated when we sell water. Couple that with, as Lauren also mentioned in her presentation, the city's infrastructure replacement program. And so those are, regardless of how much water is flowing through the system, we have to maintain and improve that infrastructure. So that's a very large fixed cost. And so in some ways you have these contradictory trends of increasing fixed costs but reduced usage, which can cause issues in terms of the amount of revenue being generated by the utility. By taking some of that, by making this change in the monthly service charge, we're taking some of that money out of the volumetric bucket, so to speak, and putting that into the fixed bucket to ensure the revenue stability, that we don't have to raise rates continuously just to make up for conservation. It also improves the equity and distribution of the costs. Again, this speaks to the indexing by meter size. If you think about the amount of infrastructure it takes to serve a single-family house with a 5/8 or a 3/4 inch meter, that's vastly different than, say, a 2-inch, 3-inch, 4-inch, or a 14-inch water meter. And so it makes that distribution of costs more proportionate to the impact and the demand of that particular customer. And based on these previous two bullet points, more and more utilities around the country are going to this model of placing more of the cost into the fixed cost aspect of the bill as opposed to the volumetric. In the case of the city today, we're generating about 84% of utility revenues for water and sewer through the volumetric piece and about 16% through the fixed charge. Under this proposal, it'll take it from about 81 to 19. So it's a fairly small step percentage-wise, but again, sets us on a path towards all of these points. And again, customers will still be able to control the vast majority of their water bill through their uses. There's still an incentive to conserve, both for financial and environmental reasons. They still control their own destiny when it comes to water and sewer charges. And so with the proposed change to the 1901 water agreement with the university, the monthly service charges that I just spoke about, these are the proposed utility rate increases for next year. For water, it's a 3% increase, wastewater 5%, and natural gas a little over 1%. And for the stormwater utility, there are no proposed changes to the current fees. And so the impact for an average customer in the city uses about 400 cubic feet of water, just a little less than 3,000 gallons a month, and 4,600 cubic feet of natural gas. It works out to be a little less than $5 per month, and about 85% of our customers receive all three utilities in some way, shape, or form. And that concludes our presentation. We'll be happy to answer any questions you might have. You also have the proposed changes to the ordinance, which reflect the rates and charges. There are also some administrative cleanup items, for lack of a better term, when utilities was created as its own department. Just updating some of the verbiage related to that. And then also you have a public hearing this evening, which was advertised on May 21st and May 28th in the Daily Progress. Thank you.
Any clarifying questions?
I have one, and this will go to the, when we met, I appreciate all the work and everything went into this. I might have missed it, but the part about best practices and looking at other Virginia cities that have made this change, is there some research about that, or?
One of the things we looked into were, I think there were really two questions that I recall. One was what other utilities had an index, had their monthly fixed charge indexed, and then the second was what other cities do. The closest example we could find was the Albemarle County Service Authority. Their monthly charges are indexed by meter size. In terms of other communities in the state, we had our utility rate consultant provide us a variety of information, and I must apologize, actually getting that into sort of a digestible apples to apples comparison was a bit of a challenge. But there was voluminous information provided from other communities. Also, I think I may have shared at our meeting that our utility rate consultant who does these sorts of studies across the country, as I noted in the presentation, this is something they're seeing more and more of. I mentioned the percentages in terms of Charlottesville. The national average is about 33% of a customer's bill is the fixed charge, and about 66% is the volumetric. Some places, and Newport News is the one they cite the most often, they're actually trying to go to a 50-50 relationship, that 50% is the fixed and 50% is the volumetric. So that was the information that we had received. And again, I apologize for not being able to compile that in a digestible format.
But in that case, like in Newport News, is it differentially priced there? Yes. Okay, so my question is still how, like, out of the 135, localities in Virginia, and how many of them are on this basis, and how many of them have the fixed?
We can pull that together and get that for you.
Okay.
Okay, any other question? No? All right, I open public hearing. Okay. Is there anyone here to speak on the? Are you fixing your shoe or are you coming up?
Fixing my shoe.
To come up or no?
No.
No. Okay, I just want to.
All right. Thank you for asking.
All right. Anyone here to speak? No? All right. So close public hearing discussion.
Mayor Walker, if I may, I'd like to add a little detail because I am the council's representative on the Rivanna Water and Sewer Authority. Just because it was mentioned that a lot of the biggest increases come from the wholesaler, which is the Rivanna Water and Sewer Authority for both water and sewer. And it just two big buckets, excuse the pun, but one bucket's water, the other bucket's sewer. This community has been demanding excellent water for the last 6 years. And 6 years ago, there was a major debate about how to treat the water before it enters into our system for consumption. And back in 2012, that was the discussion of whether or not to add chloramines into the water treatment facilities so that it would kind of purify the raw water as it came in and made it drinkable. there was a loud hue and cry raised by members of the public. I'll never forget, one was a scientist and one was a emergency physician. Some of the most cogent arguments that brought forth the data that said that the chloramines were a potentially hazardous combination with all the other chemicals added to the water. That gave rise to a pretty extensive community engagement process where we had people come and speak to us about how to treat water, one of whom was Mark Edwards, who is now made somewhat famous because he's the one that cracked the case in Flint, Michigan. But because of those people that came to talk with us, we wound up moving forward with what they call a granular activated carbon filtration system to purify our water. It's timely because we just recently had blue ribbon cutting ceremonies to open up these facilities on all of our treatment plants. And it's a very expensive system, but it does mean that it is the best way to clarify and clean your water before we drink it. The other important thing to understand is we really take our environmental stewardship seriously with regards to the treatment of our sewer water. We do not want to be loading sewer into our rivers and streams. And that is kind of exemplified by the fact that we moved the Willow Mills pump station out of the floodplain at the Rivanna River and put it on Morris Creek treatment plant. That was an expensive, highly debated proposition. But I think as we look at the 100-year storms that are happening at a frequency of like every 5 years now, and what that former location of that pump station is now submerged, we really did make the right decision to move that and get that on higher ground. And we did it through tunneling so that we conserve costs as much as possible. The other thing is that we've also made a very big commitment to maintaining a high quality of life for the Willow Mills residents, the Belmont Carlton residents, and also people that live and work in Pantops through the odor mitigation plan. So that is where the odors do not go past the fence at Morris Creek, and I think some of you might realize you don't smell it anymore when you're on 64. It really made, and across the street from Morris Creek, you have low wealth communities and trailer parks living there, and so we've made their lives better by cleaning the air and freeing it from odors. So I just wanted to give you some richness in the detail to understand where this money is coming from, and it actually has made our planet healthier, made our people healthier, and that we're very grateful to have a community that is committed and is active, but also a community that's willing to pay for the difference. So I just wanted to add that added detail.
Okay.
Thank you.
Did you? So I would just like to, for the most part, I'm in agreement with. I would have liked UVA's terms to be a little different than a 3-year. So maybe next year be at 100%. Just throw that out there. But also to remind people of the water assistance program and the wastewater assistance program and the GAP program for individuals in our community who need assistance with paying water, sewer, and then gas bills. So to make sure that people are aware of those programs and apply if they need the resources.
Madam Mayor, a quick comment on this. So I don't know, for a minute thinking about this, including in the meeting we had, and I think it does get into an important policy option that we have. So we have these increased costs which come, as Ms. Galvin explained, and I think we're based with the question, do we spread those costs evenly among all ratepayers, or do we start to charge pro rata based on use for the access? And that's what's being proposed here, and I think it's a very worthwhile debate to have. the reason that I'm concerned about it, so if you look, there's about, this is why I asked for more information on the best practice parts. There's 224 people who'll pay $250 more a month. There's 231 who would pay a year, who pay $432 more a year, and then there's 36 who have the 3-inch meter who pay $912 more a year. That's setting aside the really big ones, and that's a choice that we have. You can, we have been in a situation where you pay exactly the same for basically being plugged into the water grid, and now we're switching that, and I just think it raises it. There's philosophical and equity concerns it raises. It gets into the territory of a different paradigm of government where you basically charge differential prices, or you have differential based on how much somebody uses something. And the very worst kind of extent of that is fee for service policy, or like in some places where they've said, well, you didn't pay into the fire system, so you're not going to get fire service or anything like that. That's not what's being proposed here, but it is charging differentially as compared to what we did before, which was everybody paid the same price just for being plugged in. This is a change from that.
But this,
so it changes totally the cost basis based on the width of your
Which is,
pipe.
if I understand it,
Which we
it's
don't do.
actually much more equitable because it's based on the volume.
It depends. It's
And
in
the
the
bigger
same,
user is the one that's gonna be,
but it's the same paradigm as the wastewater treatment utility, which is subject to great debate. So it depends on how much impermeable surface you have, and then you get charged differentially. If we were to introduce that same logic on stormwater, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
If you were to introduce that same logic on many more things and it became the default, then it really would be hard to do a lot of
Well,
governance.
there is vehicle miles traveled is one example, using
I-
that as a way
I agree.
to make people that drive their cars more responsible for paying for the roads.
I agree. So I'm just flagging it because it
Yeah,
is
but
a
I think- I
change
mean,
in.
it is a change, but
It's a change in paradigm.
you were suggesting that it wasn't fair, and I'm suggesting that I believe personally it's more fair.
I think one can make arguments both ways, but I
Mm-hmm.
just want to flag it. I am uncomfortable with it right now because I'm concerned about where it goes if it becomes the default in a city that is changing policy a lot, and say we were to do this with most services and fee for service, as opposed to just spreading it equally.
but we've had that issue in the community across the board where people who use more resources may not, and I mean, may not pay their, I mean, I like what I heard in the meeting and what I heard in the presentation and read here in terms of based on usage, you will pay more. And that I did have questions about why that didn't transfer to necessarily to people who use less or people with smaller meter size, or why even with the increase from UVA, why were rates increasing? Those were some of my questions, but I definitely like the fact that what staff has presented to us, that people who use have the larger meter size, they will pay more. And from the way it was explained to me, we're not talking about single-family homes. We're talking about apartment buildings and, bigger businesses and things like that. So I think it's a different conversation.
Something I want to know more about, like small
Yeah.
businesses, but I think it's just worth discussing.
All right. Any other?
So we're gonna move in second here to get this.
All right. Motion.
I make a motion to accept the ordinance amending and reordaining Chapter 31 Utilities of the Code of the City of Charlottesville, 1990, as amended to establish new utility rates and service fees for city gas, water, and sanitary sewer.
Second.
All right. And there's no vote. Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
This is the first of two.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
A lot of hard work, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, so we're moving on to 4, South Ravenna Reservoir to Ragged Mountain Reservoir Waterline Project, first of one reading.
Mayor Walker, did you say you want the meeting to end by 10 o'clock?
Wes, hi, good evening.
We'll make it pretty close. Thank you, Mayor Walker, members of the council,
Good evening.
Mr. Jones, Ms. Robertson, Ms. Rice, and Mr. Wheeler. Thank you all. I am Bill Moyer, the Executive Director of the Ravenna Water and Sewer Authority, as well as the Ravenna Solid Waste Authority. So I appreciate the opportunity to talk with you for just a few minutes about a major project that we have planned for the community. In fact, it has been approved by City Council of the past, and maybe get your input on a timeline for when we might want to construct this project. So this is the South Ravenna Reservoir to Ragged Mountain Reservoir water line project. This is a raw water line. It's not drinking water yet. This is before it gets treated. So, let me see if this works. I have to do this. All right. So just in quick review, the city is part of what we call the urban water system, which includes you, your customer, UVA, as well as the urbanized areas of Albemarle County, are all in what we call the urban water system. And we provide water to that system from the South Fork Water Treatment Plant located on 29 North near Walmart. And let me back up. Went the wrong way. So let me use this. Try tools I can operate. The water that we get to treat at the South Ravenna Treatment Plant comes from the South Fork Ravenna Reservoir located out on Hydraulic Road. Similarly, the Observatory Hill Water Treatment Plant also is the second major provider to the urban water system, and we store water for that treatment plant in the Ragged Mountain Reservoir. Now, one interesting point is that the Ragged Mountain Reservoir is our largest reservoir. It holds about 1.5 billion gallons, but it does not have what we call a large watershed. That is, when it rains, not a lot of water finds its way to Ragged Mountain. So we have to fill it from the Sugar Hollow Reservoir located up in Whitehall through a pipeline that's about 100 years old. The South Fork Ravenna Reservoir has the largest watershed, and in fact, everything that is west of Route 29 from Greene County to Nelson County essentially flows into the South Fork Ravenna Reservoir. So it fills up much better than the Ragged Mountain. But this project we're going to talk about is to build a 9-mile-long pipeline that would connect the Ravenna Reservoir with the Ragged Mountain Reservoir. And what that would allow us to do when there's a lot of flow coming into the Ravenna Reservoir, we can pump 25 million gallons a day over to Ragged Mountain and get it full much more quickly and keep it full much better than when we have to pipe 4 million gallons a day from Sugar Hollow. So this line will carry 6 times more water. And it will serve to improve our water capacity for the community for over the next 50 years. And it's going to provide reliability that when we hook these reservoirs together, we have multiple water sources for 2 water plants, all serving the urban area. And I wanted to just mention one example when we talk about reliability. So last Thursday morning, about 2 a.m., staff called and said there was 7 feet of water flowing over the Ravenna Dam. There's usually about 4 inches, but there was 7 feet going over the dam, and we had to enact a protocol, emergency actions to monitor the state of the dam and make sure it stayed in good shape. And staff noted that when you stood near the dam, you could feel the ground shaking from 7 feet of water. Over 20 billion gallons a day at that rate were flowing over the dam. So we keep our fingers crossed and do our best. We never have a problem. But when we think of reliability, if the Ravenna Dam would be impacted at any point, we would be limited to getting water through Observatory and the Ragged Mountain Reservoir, which right now is unable to fully supply the urban area by itself. So, a little more detail about this water line. It's going to go from the South Ravenna Reservoir out at Hydraulic Road, and generally it's going to come up Woodburn Road, around Rio Road. It's probably going to loop, this is Rio Road, probably loop behind Albemarle High School, cross over at Colthurst Farm, and then make its way to the Birdwood Golf Course area, to Reservoir Road, and hook in then into the Ragged Mountain Reservoir. So this is a 9-mile long water line, about 36 inches in diameter. And again, this is what we call raw water. It's not been treated. It's not made its way to the water treatment plants. Some of the history here of the Community Water Supply Plan is Albemarle County and Charlottesville had a historic drought back in 2001, 2002. There were mandatory restrictions, and generally the community came to an understanding that we did not have enough water. And so this plan was debated over for about 10 years. In 2008, City Council approved a water plan which included building a new dam at the Ragged Mountain Reservoir, which has been completed. You approved building the water line that we're talking about from South Ravenna to Ragged Mountain, replacing all the water piping and pumping between Ragged Mountain Reservoir and Observatory Water Treatment Plant, and we have that planned, as well expanding the South Ravenna and Observatory Water Treatment Plants so that we could treat more water. Further, the four parties, the city, the Albemarle County Service Authority, and Albemarle County and Ravenna reached an agreement on how this was going to be funded, that the dam was going to be funded 15% by the city, 85% by the Service Authority, and the additional water that came from the dam was allocated similarly. Further, that the water line from Ravenna to Ragged Mountain, the city would fund 20% and the Service Authority 80% of that. And another part of that agreement was that the Ragged Mountain Dam was actually built so that we can raise the water level in that reservoir another 12 feet, which would be 600 million gallons additional to the reservoir, when the community demand equaled 85% of the water capacity. So when the community demand suggested we needed more water, that water level would be raised. So this project generally is going to cost about $100 million, but the portion of main discussion is the 36-inch water line that's 9 miles long. It'll have a pump station at both ends so that we can pump water not only from Ravenna to Ragged, but we can also pump water back. So it's uphill both ways, from Ragged back to the water treatment plant at Ravenna Water Treatment Plant. So it's a pipe, it's an intake structure in this Ravenna Reservoir. It's a pre-treatment facility so that we can take out a lot of the sediment and nutrients before they find their way into the Ragged Mountain Reservoir. So it is a fairly large project. $80 million is what we budget in today's dollars for the pipeline itself and the pump station, one of the pump stations, and the pre-treatment facility. The other component of the project is in the agreement that once this line is built, the line from Sugar Hollow to Ragged Mountain would be closed and no longer used. So we came up with 4 time options for when the pipeline could be built, options A through D. So right now, we're already in the process of acquiring the right-of-way for the 9 miles of pipeline, and we project that that's going to take until about 2021 to be completed. As well, we are planning improvements to the Observatory Water Treatment Plant and the Ravenna Water Treatment Plant, which is going to be $25 to $30 million. And we're planning a major pipeline to help us distribute the water. We call it the Avon to Pantops water line right now. After 2022, we plan to do the project that in between the Ragged Mountain Reservoir and the Observatory Treatment Plant, that we would replace that water line and pump station, for about $20 million. So with this 18 million and this 2 million, that's 20. And so then the pipeline portion is about 80 million, equals the 100 million total project cost. So we devised 4 schedules and went to our Ravenna board, and we've discussed this some with them. So the first schedule, option A, generally has a strategy that as soon as we acquire the easements or right-of-way around 2022, we would begin the design and construction process to build the water line so it was finished around 2030. That would be what we would call the right-of-way option. The second option, B, coincides more closely with when we're going to pay off a lot of the loans that we have for projects we've already done in water and wastewater. And this is when our debt capacity is going to improve, and the waterline project would, in a sense, be more affordable to us. And as you just heard from Lauren Hildebrand, we pass the cost to you and to the service authority. So it helps keep your rates down if we do this project in a later time frame, later than option A, when it's more affordable. Option C gets the water line completed around 2040, and that is when we project that the demand of the community is going to require additional water, and we would need the additional capacity of the interconnection between the reservoirs by 2040. Option D is sort of the long-term option, with a caveat that we have to raise the Ragged Mountain water level 12 feet. If we do that, we can probably delay construction of the pipeline itself until about 2050. So those were 4 options that we discussed with our Ravenna board. And just to give you a little narrative of that, so the early option increases the water supply and increases our redundancy and reliability at the earliest time. However, it creates a financial impact because we have a lot of other projects that we're working on. And so again, if we do this right here, we've got all these projects we're doing at the same time, essentially. So it's a financial impact. The option B also increases water supply and redundancy, but does it when we have a greater availability within our debt capacity to pay for it without having a significant impact on the rates. Option C provides the water and redundancy when our current estimate of community demand and safe yield that we would get, or water capacity that we would get from the reservoirs, coincide. And option D, the long-term option that we developed, says, again, if you raise the water level by 2040, even without building the pipeline, but you agree to raise the water level, then we can probably delay the pipeline project until about 2050. So not a lot of rocket science, but it was some logic into how we came up with these 4 alternatives. Of note, the Albemarle County Service Authority Board of Directors has notified us that they decided option B was their most favored timeline, and they also suggested that we raise the 12-foot water level at the time we complete the pipeline. So essentially, if you have the pipeline there, the whole point of it is so you can raise the water level at Ragged Mountain more quickly, and the logic being not wait until the community demand equals 85% of the capacity, but do it right away. Another note is we're updating our study of what the future community water demand is estimated to be, as well as what our water supply is available. That is, we go out and we take sonar of the reservoirs to recalculate the volume and see how much silt has washed in, how much volume do we really have in the reservoirs to know how much water is really there, and we update that every 10 years. So, and this note is that within 2 years, we're going to have better estimates or updated estimates of when the community is going to need more water and how much. So with that, I'll answer any questions that you have. If it is your pleasure, if you offer any feedback on what timeline the council prefers, that would be appreciated. Again, our main purpose in our Ravenna board of looking at these timelines was we wanted to know right away if they wanted the option A, we needed to get it into our CIP funding model right away. And they said, no, not option A. Option B or C are probably more plausible.
And Mayor Walker, if I might just add from Mr. Moyer that our staff has recommended that we go with schedules B or C.
B or C.
And that's reflected in our resolution tonight.
Okay. That's your staff, yes. Laura.
Okay, discussion?
I'd be happy to make a motion. I move that we adopt a resolution adopting timelines for the South Ravenna Reservoir Water Line Project and for increasing the water level of Ragged Mountain Reservoir.
Second.
Second it. No, thank you.
Just sitting here calculating how old my kids are gonna be when the different ones are done.
And that's still leaving both options on the table.
B and
as staff
C.
recommended. Yes, okay. Vote?
So we're just,
Oh, we went through discussion. Did you have something?
do we keep both on? Is it, so we vote for? Because
Yeah.
it says they are the most favorable. Okay,
Yeah.
sorry, just making sure I was
I
not
mean,
confused.
we could have a discussion about whether we want B or C, but I think it's leaving the flexibility to the Rivanna staff to figure that one out. And just remind people that we did have a drought in October, which is hard to remember today.
Right.
Which then we are actually having floods. So the idea of extreme weather is a reality, and the idea of building a system that has redundancy and reliability is extremely important. And I do think it's a prudent gesture to make sure that the debt service is retired before we start inquiring new debt, so that it doesn't impact our ratepayers. But waiting too long, the whole bond market could be totally different as we're seeing the chaotic movements in the national level with our economic system. You have no idea what's going to be happening in the bond market. So I think I'm very strongly in support of the resolution, and I think it will put us in a good path to redundancy and reliability.
Ms. Galvin, I'm with you because you know more about this. You put in so many hours of citizen service on this board, really, so you do know a lot about it, and it's appreciated.
Who else is on the board? You're on the board.
I'm on the board, and Ms. Hildebrand is on the board.
Okay. So you all will be a part of the decision-making of whether we go with B or C?
That's
Okay.
correct.
Yes.
All right. Okay. Vote?
Thank you very much.
All right.
Thank you.
Yes, pass 5-0, right? Yeah.
5-0.
All right. So next we have the Charlottesville Affordable Housing Fund Assistance for Piedmont Housing Alliance Down Payment Assistance Program, $186,125, first of two readings.
Good evening, Stacy Pethia, Housing Program Coordinator for the City of Charlottesville. We recently received a request for Charlottesville Affordable Housing Support from Piedmont Housing Alliance, or PHA, in the amount of $186,125. If council approves the requested grant tonight, the funding will be used to continue the down payment and closing cost assistance program the city initially funded back in May 2015. As with the initial program, the requested funds will be used to provide down payment and closing cost assistance in an amount up to approximately 20% of the home purchase price to at least 5 income qualifying home buyers, first-time home buyers, and those would be home buyers with incomes of less than 80% of area median income. Priority for program funding will be given to current residents in the Orangedale and Prospect neighborhood and city residents who wish to purchase homes within the Orangedale neighborhood. However, as with the previous program, residents from other areas of the city, as well as individuals who have worked in the city for at least 6 months, may also participate if they meet program requirements. The assistance will be provided as a zero-interest, forgivable, deferred payment loan secured through a 10-year deed of trust. And in addition to that financial assistance, each program participant will receive homeownership counseling and financial coaching to help ensure successful homeownership outcomes and financial stability for the homeowners over the long term. Participants will also be given access to home improvement grants of up to $12,500 to address any home repairs or energy efficiency upgrades through a partnership with the Albemarle Housing Improvement Program. Given the success of the program in the past, and there are some examples of success stories within your packet, staff actually recommends that we continue to fund the program and provide the grant assistance. And Shelley Murphy, the Director of Program Services for Piedmont Housing Alliance, is here tonight to answer any specific program questions that you may have.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Pythia and Dr. Murphy, double doctors in one night.
Any questions from council?
Now, I just have one quick question, Dr. Pythia, or Dr. Murphy, excuse me, whomever could answer. In regards to, so I know the program, we work directly with PHA. And then how long does it take for the recipients to receive their disbursement? Or receive their funding, rather, excuse me. Yes, ma'am.
As soon as they get qualified through a lender and through our down payment program.
Just for those listening, Dr. Murphy stated for down payment, as soon as the home buyers get qualified, they have access to the funds. Do we still have, this may be a little off topic, sorry, colleagues, indulge me for just for a second. I know at one point we were trying to make a push to have individuals move into the Orangedale 7th and a half Street, and we were working with PHA for that footprint. That's this program.
That's this program,
Okay.
correct.
Yeah.
There had been, they asked for an extension last year on
Yes,
that
ma'am.
original program. They were having problems finding homeowners that qualified in the neighborhood, as well as homes to purchase.
Mhm. Right.
And then after you approved extension of the grant, everything ticked up. So they were actually able to find quite a number of home buyers in that area.
Oh, good.
Where was this program when I was trying to buy mine?
Oh, my goodness.
Came after.
It came.
So the staff members, the city staff, are all the homes that the grant is used for purchased in the city limits?
Yes.
Okay.
And again, they must be city residents currently or have worked within the city for 6 months and
Okay.
want to move here.
Okay.
It's a great program. I know a few people have taken advantage of it.
And I do have a question, like, are there inspections done of the houses?
Through the regular, there would be the regular.
Through a regular inspection agency?
Correct.
Okay, so
Right. Yeah,
you
but the
you
city
don't,
does, no, we do
you
not.
and then PHA don't?
No.
Does,
AHIP also is inspecting because if they're doing the work
okay,
and getting permits.
thank you. Great.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So any further discussion?
I just want to, I just appreciate a lot the work that goes into this, and it's a significant commitment of funds, and it's really important. Sometimes this stuff gets lost in the radar because there's so many moving pieces. I thought that part of what was been happening with the reports and the studies that we've been doing is how difficult it is because the housing strategy that's sophisticated has a lot of different facets. So we have a whole new communications program now. One of the things that I've heard from the activist community is you guys have to do a better job of getting out the word about what's happening. So I hope that we do a good job of just getting out the word about what's happening with this program, this commitment.
And on that score too, I think it's important to note that the families that are being helped, they're under 66% AMI.
Mm-hmm.
And many are at 35%, 34%. So this is home ownership for very low income people.
Yeah.
Yes.
which is a very good thing.
Very good thing. She has a question.
Yeah, I have 20 questions, Wes, actually. No, I don't. That was just for him. All right, so invite a motion. Someone want to make a motion?
So why did you say? I like to present this, make this motion. I'd like to ask that, I move that we accept Charlottesville Affordable Housing Fund assistance for the Piedmont Housing Alliance Down Payment Assistance Program in the amount of $186,125.
Second.
All right, there is no vote.
Okay.
Sorry. A little happy.
All right, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for staying up so late.
Yeah.
That's pretty early for us.
I know, it's real early. Any other business?
Don't jinx it.
Nope. All right, moving along.
Oh, really quick, I just, this is not other business, but I just wanted to, obviously, like, talking about all this Mother Nature with all the water stuff, but I do want to just commend the staff from the city that really stepped in to really provide the support to our region through a pretty difficult time that just seemed to keep going even into Sunday. I just, when you think you're gonna get below water, you're under it again. I'm sorry, when you get above water, you're below it again. And so I also just want to recognize, like, there's a lot in our community that are struggling through this process. And so I just can't thank staff enough, and just want to acknowledge that, our thoughts are with those folks who have been so directly impacted by these natural events.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. Well said.
Thank you very much. Yes.
Well said.
Thank you, Brian and team.
Thank you.
That's all.
Okay. So now we are at matters by the public. Would anybody like to speak?
Hello, Brendan Hassler. I'm not sure if I'm a resident of the city or county. The border goes through my apartment. I'd like to talk a bit about the water pipe that was just proposed by the RWSA. And first off, I'm going to say I am completely in favor of there being a pipe. I mean, Mr. Moore made his case excellently, especially in the context of our recent flooding. The part that bothered me the most was I actually took a look at the map while I was looking there, and I saw that the water line goes right by Albemarle High School. And I don't know if you've ever been in a school or an educational environment, or learned or tried to teach while people were jackhammering through pavement outside, but it's nearly impossible. Now, I can't say that I know the specifics of when they're going to be doing digging, when they're going to be laying parts of the pipe and where, but if this project is lasting 8 years, then I think that the probability that this is really going to affect people in the school system is very non-negligible. And I remember being at the RWSA meeting where they proposed different option lines for the pipe. And I remember that they had over a dozen different options, specifically in the area around Georgetown Road, that would possibly circumvent the parking lot at Albemarle County High School. Ms. Galvin, you were there as well. I don't know if your recollection differs from mine, but I'm sure that this pipeline route was determined by very qualified people using very qualified mathematical models, nice calculus sort of minimization problems like they teach you. I'm sure that these parameters were very set. I'm saying that the parameters that ended up that gave us the pipe were wrong if we're talking about minimizing inconvenience, because I know you don't want to be like the big scary government coming in to tell property owners, oh, we're going to dig up your property and put a pipeline underneath it. I know you guys, that's very politically unpopular. I understand that. But the education, I think the system's been pushed so far to the brink through several administrations that I think at this point, foisting these huge construction projects basically on their property, I think that this is, I think that whoever chose the design of the pipeline route should really reconsider going around Albemarle High School, because I was very much led to believe that that was possible. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anyone else?
Mayor Walker, if I may respond to that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's Brenton.
Yes.
Point well taken. Okay. And we don't know exactly where the distances are and the buildings are. It's still kind of a pretty rough line. So, but I will follow up on that and find out how fixed it is and what can be done to make sure that impacts are minimized. But that's a very good point that you raise. So thank you.
All right, anyone else? All right, meeting adjourned.
Hey, very good.